It's 7 o'clock on Monday, September 10th, 2008. This is the Sutton School Committee. I'd like to call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business is the Citizens Forum. Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda, the minutes from August 27th, and the bill schedules from August 30th and September 5th.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Any discussion?
I got a quick question on the uniforms. There were two, so both bill schedules had uniforms for the soccer teams. Can you, one was for like total of $3,600, the other was for a little over $2,000. So I'm just curious.
We'll get back, we'll get
We're
back
gonna
to you on
cover
that question.
Okay.
Well, we'll cover it at the next meeting, just we'll check to make sure and verify. I did see those, but we'll check and see if that's just a double or whether there was a reason for that.
Okay.
But I don't have the answer right off the top of my tongue, and I'm assuming Nancy doesn't as well.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Next item is the student update with Sophie Briggs and Nora Garvey. Welcome.
Thanks. Oh, I always pull this. Okay. So we started school. And so I guess I'll talk about some of the academics. So this year, Nora and I are seniors. So we discussed a lot of our like senior privileges and like flex and stuff. And that means like you have to keep your grades above, I think, a 70 in all of your classes. You can't have like any over 4 tardies, and your absences have to be within the normal range, and that means that you can have open campus during your SPP like study period, and we're allowed to be in the library if we want to. There's still lots of options for AP classes. Like I think a lot of people are very satisfied with that as well. We also started Connections this year, which is like our diversity like education group, and we also help like assimilate the freshmen into high school culture. And this year we're also going to be working with some of the middle school students, and it's really good team building and education about acceptance and being kind to one another, and it's a really fun group that we started, and there's about 40 kids that are doing it, and it's really awesome. We have lots of staff involved and Mr. McCarthy as well. Homecoming is coming up in a couple of weeks. Lots of sports games. We're going to have the dance that we have as per usual. This year, the National Honor Society is going to have a fundraising, well, not a fundraising, but like a volunteer-based booth for all the students that are in National Honor Society. So it's going to be like an activity center for little kids. So when parents have kids to come watch their siblings play in games, we'll have an activity center for the little ones to keep them occupied while parents are there, and it's all volunteer. Student Council has their booth as per usual, and also the Booster Club and all of the individual classes have one as well. We also took a vision survey in regards to adding new classes to our schedules, and I think that was very well received as well. We have a pretty good amount of options when it comes to classes already, but I think it was really cool that they wanted to hear what we wanted, like in regards to students. So I know I put like I wanted more music education, because we have our like band and music classes for we have music classes in the middle school, but in the high school I really wanted to continue like music theory, like ear training, things like that. So I know I put that on as well, and that's all I have. Doors next.
So for all the sports, most sports have already started. They all had their first game. I'm on a cross country team, so Friday we had our first meet, and we won against Burncoat, which was pretty great. Boys and girls both won. I personally am in the group going to Haiti, so we had our first meeting at lunch on Friday, based on fundraising, coming up with ways to help raise money for the kids in Haiti and maybe bring supplies down that they need. Because one of the things that they have is that each of us coming from Boston, our checked bags is a hockey bag filled with all supplies that the kids down there need at the time, which I think is great. That like it's not gonna be my clothes, it's gonna be stuff for the kids, because like I don't need anything. They need it more than us here. For seniors, Mr. Marcucci is asking everybody what they want to do for internships. He's starting to like plan and have everyone start applying and stuff. So I personally am going to be doing, I want to do something with physical therapy. That's what I'm interested in to do in college. I don't know what.
Yeah, I'm looking into one at a hospital as well, probably UMass or something musical.
And a lot of the kids have been looking at colleges, have been trying different colleges, figuring out what they want to do, if they want to do sports or that.
Guidance has been talking to us about it too.
Oh yeah, and guidance, in each of our English classes, guidance will be, I believe it's on Wednesday. I think guidance is coming in. They're going to talk to us more about like the Common App and helping us fill that out, and application process for different colleges who aren't on the Common App.
Oh, senior trip Friday.
Thank you. Friday we have our first senior trip. We are going to Storrs Adventure Park in Connecticut, and so it's a way for all us seniors to become closer as a group and team building. I think it should be pretty fun.
Good.
It's a student update.
Anybody have any questions for them?
What do you want from guidance counselors in picking schools? Or have you guys picked schools yet?
I've looked at a few and I've toured a couple, but I think it's important and guidance is also doing a very good job at this as well, is they're making sure that it's individual to each person. They're not just like telling us, oh, you should do this, 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 this. They're always very adamant about us making appointments with them to go over what we need in our path, whether it be to go to college or not to. But going to college-wise, I think, especially my guidance counselor, Miss Miller, she's very good at telling us, like, oh, this seems like it would be a good option for you, like, based on your qualities that you like in school now. So, like, size-wise and, like, acceptance rates for your GPA and financially. And they're very good at giving us all the options so that we have a lot to choose from. And I think that that's good.
And they're making the process a lot more easier for us too. We each got a folder, and it had the process of different things that we need to do. So like we got things we need to do, like recommendation letters, like start asking teachers now before it gets too late until you can't do it. Because like I know for PT, like some schools it's the application process is a lot sooner. So like now I have to start asking them, and they have like a checklist of what you need to do in order to get it in on time, and so they've been really helpful with that.
So the checklist and logistics, the feedback from the guidance counselor, other resources you wish were closer by, or?
They're doing a great job.
And why wouldn't you want to go to the library? You were saying you have to have your senior privileges if you wanted to go to the library.
Yeah, the library is shared with the middle school, so there's a lot of classes that happen during that time. So if a lot of kids are there during their study periods, it gets a little bit noisy. So if you have your study period during that time and you don't want to be in a classroom with the teacher, surrounded by a lot of other people, you can have a more quiet space and go to the library if you want.
And it's just the noise if you're avoiding it. It's not that you wouldn't go to the library because there's a bunch of underclassmen there.
No, of course not.
Gotta have a little fun. Listen, you guys came out in the rain. We're curious what's going on. Gotta have a little fun.
It's the rite of passage. If you go up to the library, there's the section where all the seniors are, and you see the juniors waiting to go over, and it's really kind of a neat thing how it all works its way through. And then the envious, like 7th and 8th graders doing their virtual middle school, knowing that someday they're gonna occupy those seats. It's nice.
You like having the middle school close by?
Yeah. I liked it especially too when my brother was over there, just because I would see him every once in a while. It was good, but he's in high school now, so.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item is to approve a grade 8 field trip with Mr. Goyette.
So, in my past life, working in Attleboro, this was a rite of passage for our 8th graders. We would bring, the entire city would bring our kids to 8th grade, and I think I've had conversations before with people, and this winter we really had a nice conversation about what do you think, and I decided to pull the trigger and just have a conversation with, school site council, the PTO, and it just seemed like now is the time to really go for it. So when I surveyed the other schools in the area, out of 11 schools, 7 go to DC, 4 do not. 1 actually goes to Spain. I thought that was cool. I'm not going to Spain. Over the summer, I worked with Bill Fox, who also sends Auburn kids there, and he came up with a great 4-day trip, all-inclusive. It's going to run about $640 to $650 a student. I really think it'd be a great 4-day, 6 in the morning, the day after Memorial Day, a Tuesday. We would leave. We would come back on Friday at 10:30 at night. The itinerary is pretty much 6 to 7. You go for breakfast from 7 to 9:30. You go, and then you come back, and it's hotel, and you go to sleep. The security's involved. They have overnight security for the kids to make sure no shenanigans happen. The other schools all do 4 days. They typically do the 4 days before Memorial Day. One school, Grafton, does Memorial Day weekend. They go on a Wednesday, and they go Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and they come back on Saturday. When I talked with Bill, one of the great hotels in Tyson Corners we would be able to get if we chose to do the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday after Memorial Day. And so we secured that. He secured a lot of the places that we were going to go. We secured a nurse, which is another one of the big items that you need to find. In talking with the 8th grade team, they all were, enthusiastic about, gee, that would be a great opportunity. The conversation came up, well, what about the kids that don't go? And that would be kind of like a week of government where we could probably send the kids to things like the Freedom Trail, to Concord, up to the State House, and kind of keep that focus for those 4 days really about our U.S. Constitution, our U.S. history, that the kids don't get a lot of in the middle school, because the last exposure to U.S. history, I believe, is in the 5th grade, based on the way that the curriculum's set up. So, any questions?
So I know I've talked with you about this in the past. It's something I'm particularly excited about. I know the one thing that I look at, and again, my excitement is there. It's just, I'm amazed how quickly you were able to come around with it, which is a credit to you. But one of the things that I worry about is we'd want as many kids to be able to go as possible, and the cost is often prohibitive.
So,
and, yeah.
So one of the things that I worked with the PTO earlier, when we really started this conversation at the end of the year in June, I was like, okay, guys, if we really take these kids, what can we give up? The PTO does pies and wrapping paper right around before Thanksgiving, and then we do butter braids during December holiday. And they agreed, gee, why don't we just make that the 8th grade fundraiser that they can do? The other fundraiser we're thinking about doing, which I can probably try to pull off, but it'd be really helpful if I had some parents, which a couple of the PTO parents said yes to, was the February calendar raffle, where you get 28 days of prizes, and the kids sell the calendar for $10, and that's pure profit. So the kids could pretty much fundraise a good source of their the cost.
Okay. Do we know what the cost would be? I mean, if every child could go, is there a total cost? Just to get an idea.
So the total cost per student.
So I think you listed in here the cost per student, and it's broken out by quad, triple, double.
Right.
But is there a figure, if every student went, it would cost the district 70,000 or something like that?
If I do my math real quick, it'd be about $63,000
Okay, okay.
or $6,300.
Because educationally, I think it's a great thing. I think there's a lot of students and adults for that matter that don't get out of district as much as maybe they'd like. And something like DC, as I've talked with a lot of parents, because this is something that interests me, there's plenty of parents that have never been to DC. And I think there's so much to be learned from visiting the capital that spans multiple educational areas, so.
You know, and the other thing is, you know, in my past, we would take that group of kids, and during that 4-day, that class would really bond with each other, and that was really a special time for them when they came back. They made friendships that they thought they never, you know, would have made with the other kids, and it's really interesting. The kids are beyond good for you, because a lot of times this is the first time that they've gone away without their parents. So you're like the surrogate parent, and they are going to do anything you tell them to because they are so far away, and they're like, I don't have my mom and dad around me, oh my God. And, oh, there's Mr. Goya. Okay, yeah, he says come here. Oh yeah, I'm coming right to him. So it's a nice, you know, I've only lost one kid in my entire existence, and it was in a closed place, Arlington National Cemetery. If you're going to lose a kid, it's good to lose them in the cemetery.
Yeah.
But we found them pretty quickly. They just attached themselves to another group. But it was good. I didn't lose
I don't know
any
if that's
hair.
what you offer up when you're asking for a
Sorry.
trip, but yeah, the statistics are good.
Yeah,
I'm
it's,
sure there are parents out there have lost their kid more than once, so.
yeah. Haven't lost a kid on a ski trip yet.
And the chaperones will be a mix of staff and parents?
Staff and parents, right. What, you know, I need to keep that ratio. So if teachers don't want to go, then I'd fill the trip with parents.
Do you need full buses to go?
So the cost is based on 40 kids per bus.
Okay,
So for the first bus, I get between 40 and 50 students. Then we get into that gray zone
Okay.
of anything after 50 to 80. That's where we get into that, okay, are we going to make it? Because it is based on
okay,
80.
okay.
But we
If
have
you-
110 kids
That was
right now, so figure maybe 10% of those kids don't want to go. That leaves about, 100 students that would want to go.
And that would be okay, so if
And
you
that
have
would
at
be
least
okay.
2 full buses plus, you're
Yep.
good, okay.
Yep.
So one of the things that you mentioned for the students that don't go as potential field trips, I think one of the other things that comes to mind is at some point you start to run thin on chaperones.
So the teachers that stay behind would be responsible for taking those, let's say, 20 kids
Okay.
out of the building and bringing them. And we would, in lieu of the Six Flags annual field trip, we would not go.
But to be clear, once you go down this path, this is going to become an annual trip going forward.
I think that's important, and I was a little bit where you were at, Nate, in terms of, can you get it organized that it's successful enough on the first that you can turn this into a regular event? Can you tie it into the curriculum? I think it's spectacular. I just think it's really important that it works. You know?
Right.
Done a good job with ski club.
And New York in the past, so.
Hey,
I think, and Bill Fox runs it. He's done multiple schools, multiple years, so we're in good hands. I've worked with the Fox brothers multiple times for the past 15 years. I have nothing but nice things to say about them. I trust them totally with our kids, so I think they've planned for us a really, really good trip.
So that, yeah, I mean, I have a lot of confidence, one, in your leadership in these trips, and two, in the company that we go with. And again, it kind of leads towards this becomes an annual trip. which the plus side to that is the students who are now sixth graders could potentially start fundraising now. So in 2 years, it's a little bit more palatable.
Right.
But yeah, I like this, and I appreciate you putting it together.
And going in 8th grade rather than going as a senior, kids don't necessarily travel too much, and then you start to see the love of travel, and you think about going abroad, and when you're in college, and that's a good starting point to go someplace, see something interesting. And
Right, but also get you excited about history.
Right.
Exactly.
Cool.
Right.
Cool, because
Right.
that all feeds into the travel thing too, so I think it's.
How-
Are you done?
California.
How are the costs for the kids who remain behind? You talked about a trip to the State House. How are those costs going to be handled for those trips?
So those, well, for the State House, for the Freedom Trail, you're basically just paying for the bus. And I've been working with AA Transportation and getting pretty good pricing for that. Plus, I also maybe can help grab Nancy's ear and try to work things out that way too. So the cost is relatively small.
But would
for
the
those
kids who remain be responsible for that, or is that out of the school budget as an alternative field
It
trip?
would be a cost to the student, like we're gonna go to the State House, it's gonna be $5, and we're gonna also walk the Freedom Trail and have lunch at Faneuil Market, which is always a good trip too.
We've never had a problem. I mean, if we've never had an issue with trips where we're asking large groups to go, the band, where if a student is in need and they're able to fundraise a couple $100 and we need to come up with the rest of the money, there are ways we've always been able to make that happen. And so I'm pretty confident that if there are kids that want to go, don't have the full amount of money, that we would find a way to make that happen.
And a trip like this on the East Coast, the bus trips with the bus lines are, in my mind, so much easier to coordinate. So much of the difficult stuff that's easy to forget is taken care of. And then the larger, as you say, with a team, so you do all of the 8th grader, and if you can do it year over year, the expectations of it, the more the teachers can incorporate what's coming up. I think it's phenomenal.
Thank you.
And I think it's one of those things that it builds, again, we say it year after year, meeting after meeting, the stuff that you do to build the culture in the middle school is excellent. And this is just another thing, and it kind of goes to that next level where it builds the camaraderie, the relationships, so.
And it's
Again,
not
excellent.
and it's not an end of the year trip. They still have plenty of school left to enjoy that camaraderie.
And there's a new focus on civics, and I think a trip to Washington addresses civics significantly better than Six Flags. So
And it's still fun. If you look at the agenda, there's a lot of fun things going on.
DC is so great.
Oh,
It's such a
so
great
much cool
city.
stuff.
Yep.
And for all those, there's still a lot of kids that may never experience going to a DC. So it's a great opportunity.
The schedule's great. I suspect there's opportunity with both state and federal legislators who would
Oh, yeah.
contribute
Yeah,
in ways.
Bill will be on the phone right away.
Right.
And get us, he tells the stories of how, Auburn, they go right to the front gate of the Capitol building, and out comes one of the aides, and right through security in, and they don't wait in line. So that's the two pieces that we have to wait on. The Holocaust Museum, which the tickets aren't available until a certain time, and then you get on the phone and you get those. There was one other where we have to wait.
African American history is still, I think,
Yeah,
darn near impossible to get.
they're
a
like
ticket.
Hamilton tickets.
Okay.
I think it's great.
Anybody like to make a motion?
Make a motion.
A second?
So the motion is,
Making a motion to pass the trip to DC for the 8th graders as presented by Mr. Goyette.
okay.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Terrific.
I'm not leaving.
No, you're up for STEM week.
Yeah, I am. I gotta put on my teacher hat now. Hopefully I can still do this. 6,
I could have still had
7, 8.
You know, it's a shame is they're not dittos. Shame he's passing out photographs.
Thank you,
Not
Jim.
any of us.
Yeah, you can't smell these.
All right.
That's still warm. That's dated.
All those
And wet.
dittos, yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, that was that's really ancient.
I'm not bad, well, yeah.
I remember
Ditto
those.
machine.
Yeah, I remember those.
I do too.
That's eighth grade. So, team,
We just need to know, we gotta talk to Christina to find out.
So, Governor Charlie Baker declared that based on the success of some citywide programs in Boston over the last 2 years, he has declared October 22nd to the 26th to be Massachusetts STEM Week, where school districts across the state can run a STEM Week. And one of the partners that was heavily involved in the Boston STEM Week for the past 2 years is, I'm sorry.
Could you explain what STEM is for people
Sure.
who are, for the
STEM
3
is-
people who are watching us?
Yeah. Science, technology, engineering, and math.
Thank you.
It's
And
4, the football game hasn't started yet.
so, I2 Learning is an organization that came together through MIT. They are well funded by Bose, MIT, MathWorks, as well as a bunch of other organizations. So they come well funded. I received an email about I2 Learning and the STEM Week and what our kids could be doing, and it looked very interesting to me. So I gave it to Vanessa Hurley, our STEM teacher, who really researched it, and then to the kudos of the staff, 2 days before the end of the school year, she went around and got a commitment from 20 of our staff members. So what is STEM Week? So STEM Week asks us to give up a week, 4 hours a day, to do STEM activities. And if you look at the 6th grade parent at the end, the 6th graders are going to be asked to build a lunar colony. And during the week, they are working on all sorts of activities that have to do with science and math, astronaut training, learning about light and water and temperature on the moon, the atmosphere, building a spacesuit for the astronaut, and putting it all together into a showcase on Friday where parents will come and the kids will explain what they learned and why they built a lunar colony the way they did. In 7th grade, they're going to be learning about kinetic sculpture, which has a lot to do with physics and balance. And they meet artists that also deal with a kinetic sculpturing. And they end up building a sculpture at the end, almost like it could be to the extent where, remember when you go to the Museum of Science in Boston, and there's that huge maze and the balls run all around them. That's what the kids could eventually start to build, because they've gone through all little pieces of that. And on Friday, they would showcase to their parents their personal sculpture. 8th grade is doing surgical techniques. And what they learn is about what is it like to be a doctor? What kind of things do you need to know? From diagnosing patients, from learning about circulatory, nervous system, doing dissecting, suturing an orange. So there's, they fracture a bone / pencil and have to build a cast. So there's all sorts of great activities that the kids do that the teachers put out there. In order for us to have done this, teachers needed to, number one, because we have 5 sections per grade, we needed 5 teachers per grade level to agree that they would go through the 2-day training. The 2-day training, go figure, because we were so interested in this and we had so many teachers, They came to Sutton to train us for the 2 days. They send you all of the stuff to do it. And when I say stuff, I mean down to you are taking out a tumor out of the body, and they send you the tumor, which is Play-Doh, in a Jello. They send you the Jello that's been formed in an ice cube tray. They send you the ice cube tray. So everything that you basically need, I think for 6th grade, you need marshmallows. For 7th grade, you need nothing. For 8th grade, we have to purchase chicken legs. And so when you look at what we're asking kids to do, to be innovative, to communicate, to do real world, real life applications, this answers that question. I think the kids will be really excited to go through every single day and learn about this. We've paired it also with a film that goes with each one of these. And they also, one of the requests that we had from the teachers was, I still want to see my kids. So every day we've built a schedule where there's still an opportunity, one period a day, depending on how the team wants to work with that, where they can still see their kids. It was 5 days, and at the end of the whole thing, parents are back invited into our school because, you know, I felt kind of ripped off. The elementary school gets to do all these great parent, come on in and see what the kids are doing, and we really haven't ever done that in the middle school. This allows us to do that. And I'm really excited that this might be something where kids who are thinking about staying in Sutton because they want to possibly be a surgeon or a nurse because of this exposure that they've had during STEM week, we might keep kids here in Sutton High School. The other caveat is because the teachers did all of this work on their own, not paid, they filled out a survey at the end of it. And at the end of this whole experience, they fill out another survey, and I2 Learning sends them a check for $500. So it was a win-win situation all the way around. It was hard to say, no, we don't want to do this, because they give us all of the curriculum, all of the materials. And they've already tried it. It's not like we're the pilot school. They've done this for years and years. And what they really are looking for is to be able to make this all the way across Massachusetts, that every student goes through this I2 Learning. So
This is great.
Cool.
Thank you for finding it. Anything that we can introduce the kids to spark their interest
Oh,
only
yeah.
helps with education, so
Agreed.
this is excellent.
sorry. And you know, it's very little cost to us. And they send us everything, and we get to keep it. And if we choose to do it again the following year, they send us all the same brand new stuff. So we can add to our science and math program with all of this equipment. They will send us, and I went through all 3 two-day trainings, so I got to see what the kids would be doing. I was excited after the 2 days. But they send us things like sheep pots, sheep brains. They send us scales to measure. They send us these fan kits where the kids have to build blades to make the fan turn, to turn the light on at the end of it. All of these kits come. They sent us a vacuum sealer kit where you have to build that spacesuit and put the marshmallow in it, and you have to create a vacuum with the spacesuit in it, and then when you release the vacuum, you got to see what happened to your astronaut. Did you build a good enough suit? And then explore about what was your suit like as opposed to somebody else's suit. What did they do? And it's really part of the engineering program as well, of, you know, looking at something, building it, testing it, going back, retesting, etc.
That's so cool.
Excellent.
And it adds all the senses, that's what learning's all about. Learning's not one-dimensional.
No.
This is spectacular. That's
The-
cool.
and you get to think like a surgeon. You get to think like a sculpturer. You get to think like NASA. You know, build it. So,
This is great.
And we get to keep everything.
and we get to keep everything. And the kids, my fear is the kids will get done with the week. They'll come into school on Monday,
more.
and they'll be like, why are we doing it like this? Can't we do it the other way? Um, So,
Which
It's
is,
like having a vacation.
That's-
which is exactly what the Visions Committee
Yeah.
is
Absolutely.
looking for. This is a great starting point for it.
And it's, yeah, it's a good testing ground,
And
absolutely.
the fact that there were 20 teachers that committed to doing this is fantastic. I sense the excitement in your voice, and 20 teachers volunteering to do this on their time. I fully expect. I'm blocking out the day, October 26th, because I want to come and see what they did.
yeah. We had the first in the valley. When I said to the Blackstone Valley curriculum coordinators, hey, did anybody hear about I2 Learning? We're doing this. They were all like, oh my God, you're doing this? We have to come see you. We want to see this. We missed the boat on this one. And MIT has sent people out to see what this training was like. They want to also send people to see what this is. And the good news is there's a program for 5th grade. There's a program for 9th grade. Their programs, they're pretty good. And if we can maybe be the middle school and lead and then push it out to the other 2 schools, I think we are in a win-win situation all the way around.
Absolutely.
Mr. Goya, before you go, I'm reporting out about low-stakes writing to learn in the middle school. So instead of me reporting out while you're here, why don't you just briefly talk about what's going on with that while you're here?
Sure. So one of the initiative in the middle school is to allow kids to write low-stakes writing to learn in pretty much every class every day. That's our goal. If we can get there, great. If we miss the mark, how much did we increase? Great. So they went through a one-day professional development in which I went through 15 strategies that they could use in their classrooms. I gave them a survey at the end about how comfortable they were with those strategies. And what I'll be able to do is every month I'll be tracking how many did you do in history? How many times did we do that in English? How many times did we do that in math? And create a baseline and try to increase it every single month. And then also introduce new strategies throughout the year. And hopefully we'll get the kids writing more, low stakes writing, which really is writing to learn, putting down your thoughts on a piece of paper. Anything from, hey, what do you think about this, to something a little more challenging. And it's just quick. It doesn't have to be graded. You're not using, looking for the capital T's and the periods at the end. You just want them to be able to quickly put their thoughts on a piece of paper and be able to communicate what their thinking is and have discussions possibly from that and generate, as opposed to just sitting there with, the blah, blah, blah and the drill and kill.
Yeah, kill. Yeah, it's bad. I agree.
That's
No,
So-
that sounds great.
We're excited. I'm excited to walk into classrooms and seeing it go. Seeing it happen in art was really interesting the other day. So I know people are taking this, they're drinking the Kool-Aid, and I hope they do. And I hope it's a huge success, because it's part of my goal. So I'll be on it.
Terrific.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also shared all of this with the high school, the elementary school, and the Early Learning Center, and they are also going to be doing the training at some point in time in their school, and I've made myself available to do that training for them if they wanted to. So,
Fantastic.
Great.
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jared.
Thanks, Jerry.
The next item is going to be pushed to the October 1st meeting.
Right, so I've asked the music department to look at this particular trip. They were looking to do a trip to California for 4 days and talking with some people. I want them to look and see if there's something closer, something in the East Coast, something that, when you start 3 time zones, they're excited, but it just seemed a lot to do in a very short period of time. So I'm going to ask them to look at something on the East Coast. The band will be coming in with their proposal for their April trip. It'll be the same time frame, so that gives them 3 or 4 weeks to 3 weeks to see what other music programs are happening that week around here or someplace on the East Coast. So we'll present that on October 1st.
Something nice about the field trip to Washington DC, as it was described also, was the kids get back late Friday. So they've got a couple of days to kind of recover. Getting back on a Sunday to be in school on Monday, I think is
a killer.
maybe it's just, I'm old and hard for me to do it. But
And I think in general, I mean, as long as I've been on school committee, I feel like we've almost always been pretty supportive of the field trips. The things that we're usually concerned about is just making sure that the kids get their biggest bang for the buck. You know, when I see something like that and I worry with the travel time, the time zone issue, coming back, it's a lot for potentially, you know, the amount of value that they get for on-time quality. I guess the actual thing that they're out for and whatnot, and that's the part I worry about.
Yeah, I wish they, you know, there should be trips for band and chorus at the same time. You'd hope that music would incorporate both choral and band, but I don't know. So anyway, we'll get that to you on October 1st.
Okay. Next item is the fiscal 18 final budget transfer. Nancy?
Hello.
Hi.
We will start with the spreadsheet that has the FY18 end of year figures in the packet. Everyone have it? Good. Okay, so we're ready to close out the FY18 end of year. So what I did is I lumped it together in categories that kind of give us a better idea of where we saved and where we went over a little bit. So I'll go over each of them with you. So I broke it out by what was budgeted, and then where we came in year to date at the end of the year and what was remaining. So in salaries, and this is special education and general altogether, we budgeted 12.6 million, and we ended the year at 12.4 million, so that came out to a savings of $227,762. In utilities, we had a balance of $118,542, and that was mainly from electricity and fuel savings that we had in that category. And if you have questions as I go, just stop.
So on the salary,
Yeah.
what were the major factors that accounted for the?
It was a mix of some new personnel, some movement, and aides, some subs. We probably have to dig in a little bit more to really get it better.
So part of what we want to do for this year's budget cycle is really dig into this over the last couple of years. Why is this? And, you know, what happens really quick is you have a teacher leave partway through the year, we replace the person at the beginning of the salary schedule, and we save $30,000. Well, that happened several times this past year. So we had some of those. We had a considerable amount of savings with subs. And it's just, you know, we're doing this budget in the fall for the following year. So the changes, but it's interesting, right? You look and you say, wow, so we look at it and say, okay, where are these savings? Because ultimately, we would like to, we want to have this much remaining, so we want to look at that and say, where can we make strategic cuts that we can use in other ways going forward?
Thank you.
So, and also with electricity, we know now, we've had a track record now, we've had 2 years of looking at solar and a year of net metering. So we know that next year we'll be able to reduce this utility line because we now have a track record. We have, you know, we're able to determine that we'll be able to reduce these lines significantly.
And that one's probably a little more predictable.
Yes.
230 over, what's it, 12.6 is not a huge swing. It's
No.
less than 2%.
Not a huge swing. For those listening, it sounds like a lot, but when you look at the overall budget,
Overall
it's a
amount,
fraction.
A year with with a couple of long-term subs or something, you can.
You can
Adds up quick.
go the other way.
In the last meeting, I was asked about how much the oil was at for this year. So at this year, we're at 2.0611, and last year we were at 1.8390.
Thank you.
To you.
We're also getting brand-new boilers. I think I've mentioned this
Which should be
before.
more
So now we'll have all new boilers in the early learning center and elementary school. We did the early learning center last year. That's gonna happen this year. So that, again, will be more savings.
In facilities, we had a savings of $56,734, and that's a mix of supplies, repairs, and just the yearly contract agreements changing, because when we're budgeting for contracts a year out, so they change as they come in.
The biggest amount here, though, was repairs. That's where we had the biggest savings.
Then general other expenses, that's for each principal's other account, and for professional development, we had a savings of $26,198. For instructional IT, we had a savings of $17,721. So that includes software, IT equipment, and contracted services for IT. That has a lot to do with the contracted services for the IT. Again, you're budgeting a year out for where your contracts will come in. Our general supplies, we had a savings of $15,988, and that is our instructional, student services, and district supplies, and our classroom supplies. Transportation, so this is just our special education transportation. We had a savings of $6,781. Field trips, and this is a combination of special education and in-district field trips. We had a savings of $4,585. Textbooks, a savings of $918. Testing and assessment materials, savings of $510. And then contract services, and special education services, we went over budget by $36,272.
And that was mainly outside services for outside placements.
Our sick leave buyback for our employees, we went over budget by $17,300, and that one can be hard to predict. That was employees who retired that weren't budgeted for.
Several.
But there has been a change in the contract going forward.
Correct. So sick leave buyback goes away, I believe, in 2 years.
Right.
However, if you have a full-time employee and they have vacation time, we do have to pay out vacation time, but the sick leave goes away.
But you know, that number pops up, but that also ties into the salaries discussion earlier. So the savings there is.
Big savings, yeah.
Right. And athletics was over budget by $11,551, and that was the transportation inside for Sutton Public Schools that included that, and that was the main reason we were over on that one.
And part of it is, we make districts in everything, and we go to so many more games than, and it's just hard to predict some of those things.
How many runs is that?
I would have to look at it.
Is it
Yeah.
fair for me to try to do that? Because I'm thinking it's $300 a run for a
Well,
bus.
that's inside transportation for Sutton schools. So we budget a certain amount for our own bus drivers, and then a certain amount through AA. So that category is just for our drivers, and that's the part that we went over by. So we'll budget a certain amount.
So less than $300 a run.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
This
Yeah.
doesn't include any burden for the actual vehicle.
No, not for that part.
So that's a lot of districts.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess that one surprises me. I'd be interested in trying to get a better understanding.
I mean, that's not just transportation, it's all athletics, but we did go over on the transportation part. So, yeah,
I'm sorry, but if it's over on transport,
yeah, you're right.
okay.
It's not over totally on transportation. That was the main,
That
one of the
was the
main
main,
pieces. But we'll break
I
that down
can
and
break
get
it
that.
down further for you.
That one, I'm a little curious.
Yep. Yep. And then the contracted services is everything that we're contracted with, so we went over by 8,100. And the main part of that one was we went over on McKinney-Vento, which is an unknown factor until it happens. It's one of those unknowns. But that includes our in-district transportation with AA, our athletic transportation with AA, our copier contracts, and our tuition reimbursement category. And then our out-of-district payments, we came in right where we said we'd come in.
Nailed it.
Yeah, that one we got right. And then at the end of the day, we have a savings of $402,517. So what we would like to do is to put $120,240.86 to keep that in school choice, and then $282,275.92 into circuit breaker. And what I mean by with the school choice is we had money allocated in school choice to be applied to the general budget, so it won't be used. Am I saying it right?
That part's not in the motion, so if we can get, right, all we've got is the 402.
$402,000.
But
So what would happen? Hold on one second. Let's just get on the same page here real quick.
Sorry. Because the total's 402.
What are you going, oh, so changed it. So is that what you did?
This is what
I'm sorry, we just go with that. I'm sorry.
So what were the numbers?
So school choice is $120,240.86. And circuit breaker is $282,275.92.
So I would make a motion to approve the fiscal 18 final budget transfer in the amount of $120,240.
Can I put you on hold for
Yeah.
one moment? I apologize.
No.
Okay.
we're not transferring.
No, we're not, that's not what we're doing.
Right. Because what we're doing is, we're not gonna use 120,240 of school choice.
You're gonna put it back.
Our original budget was
Putting
to
it
spend
back.
that, yeah.
Okay.
So you're not really moving it, right? We're,
Staying right where it was.
I think that's.
So we only need to transfer to circuit breaker.
Give me one second.
Because we usually move it to school choice, right? Which puts it in the general.
So we're putting it back. All we're doing is putting it back.
I would have been under the impression we haven't spent it out of school choice. That would have been the last place.
Okay, so then that doesn't need to be transferred.
Right.
But-
But you do have to recognize the end of year,
See, I'm doing that.
Yep.
and for the circuit breaker, I don't know whether we've spent out of circuit breaker or if it's the same piece there as they've been spending after the year. The good news is it's in the right direction, and it's about 2.5%, right? I mean, the total 400 over 15.6, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Is, I think, a pretty good year.
It's a very good year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, what you're not doing, we're just not touching. I'm sorry, I was involved in something. You're just not touching School choice.
Okay.
That just stays in the account.
And for the circuit breaker, if that's not spent out yet either, are we simply recognizing the end of year that'll close out 402,000 underspent from budget?
No, I don't think that's the
Okay.
case. And what we're probably going to do is make some other adjustments at another meeting
Okay.
with these revolving accounts. This was done through the software, through the accounting system.
Right.
But we'll probably end up making some minor tweaks to this as well, between school choice and circuit breaker, which are our two main revolving accounts that support the budget.
And there are 4 budget lines that were overspent that we talked about throughout the year, so they're not surprises there, but we've got a final number, because on several of them, we had warnings and said this one was
Yes.
going over. Do we need to approve overspending those budgets? I know throughout the year, as I said, we've recognized it, but it may be that there are 4 lines that we would,
So just to explain, how I did this I presented the accounting entry. So how the accounting entry works is you got your 402,000 and you expense, you put what you're gonna take from school choice and circuit breaker out of that
right,
total amount and put your expenses back in to make it work. So that's what this entry is. But I don't think that is how the school committee signs off on it.
right, okay.
And I don't believe we've ever had to go back in and authorize. I think if you authorize this, it covers us on those accounts, because that's how we've done it pretty much every year.
Yeah, I don't know that there's, if you approved this sheet, right, because however you account for it, the sick leave buyback was budgeted 17,000 less than was spent. We as a policy have been warned in advance, knew this was coming, but hadn't approved what that expenditure would be, I don't think, throughout the year.
Or the transfer, where you're gonna take it from.
Right,
And where we have remaining funds, it becomes kind of a moot point, in that it's covered.
well, if you were running bad negative through the year, I hope have been having a different conversation throughout the year.
Correct.
But when it flips this way, it's a little bit easier.
Yes.
I don't think during the year, we were apprised of the situation. We don't approve the budget by line. So as long as there's money over, it should be able to be shifted from one.
Yeah,
line to
I
the
don't
other.
think we should have a shift from one line to the other without an approval, at one point or another.
We just run
Then we
it,
have to approve the budget line by line that way in order to do it.
we just run a line in deficit.
I guess I've been under the impression we do approve the budget as presented, which has the lines in it, and we go through meetings where we look at the lines, yeah. I think that also ties to the policy we've had, is if you're spending over a line, what would the warning process be? Because years ago, we would have to approve every expenditure over the line, and we'd say, how could you have spent prior to that approval? And I think we did a very good, I think it was the appropriate action to say, just give us the warning and we'll recover, but we've never gotten to the end of the year and said, okay, how do we recover it?
So how would you, if these lines are overspent, how do you propose leveling that out? I mean, where are you gonna take the money from? How are you gonna?
Could I make a suggestion? I think if a line is over, it's over. Right? I mean, it is over. And the overall budget, where we have a significant savings. So when I tell principals, if, for instance, the $36,000 for contracted services, we told you this was gonna be over, that line item is over. I don't know if there's any issue with having certain lines that were overdrawn because of certain circumstances that happened throughout the year. As long as the overall budget remains in full, and we have resources and revenue to cover any shortfall in one particular line item.
Especially since we were told about this as the year went through.
So I go back to worrying a little bit more about how were we told about what was the nature and what was the approval we do when we say we're going to overspend? Because what we did this year was sort of opened that up a little bit. And I agree with what you're saying. Look, it's overspent. What are you proving? It's already overspent. So-
The issue comes in, and I know where you're going. The issue comes in when we don't have $400,000 remaining in the budget, and we're running tight, and we're all gone, and someone else isn't here, and how do we make sure that we're monitoring this budget every single month so that we know, obviously Nancy and I, when we're looking at this and we're looking at these lines going over, we're clearly looking and saying, okay, where can we cover this if we have a bad year? What other line items, are we sure that we can save a little bit on one line to cover that? I don't know how to, but in the end, I don't know if there's any legal.
We're not gonna wanna, even if we're over on a line item, we wanna keep it that way, cause I do my report, my end of year report, and that is where that is.
And what's the point in truing up a budget that's complete?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the committee's responsibility in terms of end of year? Was there any responsibility from the administration to report this out?
You have to vote the final number,
What final number?
the final budget
The final
transfer.
budget.
The 14,851.
We can provide you with.
What are we voting on 14,851? Because that's the number. It's done.
14.
That's what was expended, so.
That's no
what are
different
we
than saying
voting?
you have to vote a
So
line.
you're gonna,
So you've got to vote where that 402
2,000's going into.
is going to go.
So it goes back to,
It's already done.
even though it's in school choice, we're voting that it remains in school choice?
So
Correct.
330,000 will remain in
So
school choice. It wasn't
basically,
allocated.
we're acknowledging that we recognize
Yeah,
that there's
where else would
402
it go?
left.
Yeah.
We're
goes in
closing,
school choice.
we're closing out 18.
And,
That's what this is, it's simply closing out 18.
and I don't have an issue when I look back at the past year. All along, when we were told that we're going over in this line item, we were comprised that we have several that are running under, and there's no major concern that the budget overall is gonna be a problem. So the whole time, we were aware that the funds will be there. I think what we get concerned about, at least me, is just how it's accounted for and that that's appropriate. And it sounds like it is.
So what will the motion look like?
I think the motion is simply gonna be transfer in the amount of 402-51678 to school choice, or remain in school choice as presented. But
And it's not really 402 because
It's
four of the
not.
lines are negative. The 300 that I think she's talking about would have been the positive lines go back into school choice. And it's not the total 402 going back into school choice because you got to net out
It's
four
three,
lines that were
72.
overspent.
72,570, oh my goodness, $72,517 will go into circuit breaker. The 330,000 that was initially approved by you to be allocated from school choice to the general budget will not be used.
So that's not really a vote. If you're not moving it anywhere, what's the motion
I guess
there?
it's not, it's just the 72,000.
Right, and the 72,000 is transferring from where to circuit breaker?
From the general budget to circuit breaker.
So there's still 72,000 in the general budget that's not spent.
Yes.
That's moving to circuit breaker. It's not out of school choice, it's out of general.
correct.
So then the motion is to move that $72,516.78 from school choice to circuit breaker.
No.
No.
From the
Not school
general
choice.
fund.
From the
General fund.
General
And,
fund.
and I'm not entirely sure what general fund is. Would be my
That's
next
our
question.
budget. That's the budget that you,
So we've never approved anything that wasn't a line to a line. I'm not aware of general budget line. Now, maybe that's something that we could have been doing all along, but typically we have said we're moving 20,000 from buses to some other piece.
It's almost always gone to school choice, because that allows us the flexibility to spend it in various accounts, whereas if it's in transportation, you spend it within transportation, correct?
Within transportation, we haven't had.
In
had
circuit breaker, what we've done with circuit breakers, we've always kept it in out-of-district tuitions. So it's very simple to do this. But when you start going through a couple hundred line items, and there's $50 here and $75 here, and those all add up to the savings that we wouldn't have to use $72,000 out of circuit breaker. So I don't know how to recommend how you want to vote this. It could simply be that you are voting that we did not expend $402,517 from the original budget voted by the school committee, and 72 will go back into school choice.
To me, that represents a change in voting the total budget versus movement of lines. I was under the impression that while we weren't dealing with moving in lines throughout the year, because that really was very, very difficult to do, we would still be moving lines at year end.
I think we're just returning budget money back to circuit breaker and school. Money that was approved, that wasn't expended, is being returned back to circuit breaker and school choice.
So that was
what's that
always
motion
my
look like?
understanding, though,
So
at
you
the
don't-
end of the year,
So you return-
whatever the surplus was, because it can come from
Right.
various accounts, we're voting that the surplus money gets moved to school choice, which then allows the flexibility that it can go in multiple directions. So that's why I think year over year, we've often had that motion where we move it to school choice. In this case, we're talking about 72,000 going elsewhere, right? Well,
I
I
hold
don't
argue
think
that's
it's
different
surplus
than any
money, I think
motion
it's
we've ever made.
unspent
That's-
money from the budget.
So what I'm actually doing is I'm taking the expenses that were spent from circuit breaker, because we have already in our budget, and moving it over. Like, that's the journal entry I'm making, if that makes sense.
It's different than
It's
how we've ever
confusing.
done it.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time getting my head wrapped around
This is how we did it
what that
last
motion
year.
is.
This is 100% how we did
What
it
was
last
the
year.
motion last year?
It was to move the remaining funds to school choice,
Right.
Yes.
so that it's in an account, as opposed to remaining in transportation or whatever the accounts the surplus was in. We've always done it where we take the surplus from all of those and move it to school choice, because that year's done. At least that's always
I
been
got
my
a nickel
understanding.
that says we were taking the surplus as described, much like the sheet that was handed
Yep.
to us. That it wasn't just the surplus from general funds.
No, it's surplus from anywhere. And then moving it to,
What we
maybe I'm
do
missing it.
is we spend Chapter 70. We spend all the other money. We spend out of school choice and circuit breaker at the end, which is like really basically a free cash for the school system. So it's an incentive for us not to just spend money at the end of the year, which lots of school districts do. So we have a very good working system where this allows us to have some reserves in case of an emergency. So at the end of the year, there was remaining in what you approved of $402,000. Now it's just determining where do we put that, which revolving account do we apply those reserves to?
So the motion should be to return unspent money from the fiscal 18 budget in the amount of $72,514 to circuit breaker and $330,000 to school choice.
And not expend $330,000 from school choice.
Because you're not returning it, it's already there.
It's already
Okay.
there.
But
That's the breakdown.
I think that's the action.
Yeah.
Who's gonna make that one?
I've tried a couple times, I haven't gotten it right, so I'm a little squeamish now. Did you have another question? I think I have it, but I thought I had it last time too.
What do you got?
So here's what I think we're doing. I want to make a motion to approve the fiscal 18 final budget transfer in the amount of $72,516.78 to Circuit Breaker, and the remaining $330,000 to School Choice, as presented.
Can I make a suggestion?
Please.
Certainly.
I think you're right, but I think the motion is, I move to approve the FY18 final budget transfer in the amount of $402,516.78. $72,516.78 transfers into Circuit Breaker, and $330,000 remains unspent out of our school choice revolving account. So you have the total amount remaining, and that's how it's broken out.
One more time.
Would you like to revise your motion?
Take 8. I make a motion to approve the fiscal 18 final budget transfer in the amount of $402,516.78 as presented, moving $72,516.78 to Circuit Breaker, and the remaining $330,000 to School Choice.
Second.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Passes 4-1. Next item is the fiscal 19 budget update. Nancy?
Actually, as part of that other motion, we wanted to go over the revolving accounts. So I suppose that can go onto this one as well. I'm sorry.
4 different people went, that was one of them.
So for the FY19 budget, now we haven't rolled over FY18 yet. So in the system, everything is being put in, but you're not able to print out a report. So there's really nothing significant to report to you at this time, and I don't have a report to give you. But at the next meeting, I should be able to go over that with you. But there's nothing of significance that we need to make you aware of at this time. So that's my FY19 update. And then in your packets is the revolving that Ted just mentioned. So we broke out all the revolving accounts for you, and how I did it is it starts with the FY17 balance, and you can see the income that went into the account, the expense that was spent out of the account, and I broke out expense and salary because it's 2 different categories, and then the ending balance for FY18. And then I forecasted the same out for FY19, so we can go through each one and stop me if you have questions as we go through them. And I'll go through the main ones. So school lunch, the beginning balance at the start of FY18 was $133,000, and at the end of the year we ended with $134,000. So it ended up being pretty much where we want to be for school lunch. We came in where we started. We didn't lose any money. We didn't really gain any money. It's not an account where we want to make a profit off of, so we did pretty well with that.
So I think it's important, we're on television, to talk about school lunch just a minute. So school lunch is totally self-sustaining. It does not affect our operating budget. We have a reserve of $134,000 at this time, which sounds like a lot of money, but what that money is used for is if we need to replace any equipment in the cafeteria, we tap into these funds. So it's a nice, healthy balance. We're in very good shape. But again, doesn't come out of our operating budget.
And an example of that is, did we not replace coolers and freezers 2 years ago?
The big cooler was replaced out of the capital fund.
Okay.
But we have, if a stove goes down, we repaired the dishwasher. So the equipment, when they do go down, now remember our cafeteria down in the Early Learning Center Elementary has equipment that's been in there for 25, 30 years. So those things break, and we use this money as a way to cover us. We don't have to tap into our repair line out of maintenance.
So our school bus sped transportation account. We started the year off at $61,913, and we ended the year at $72,634. This is the account that we use to purchase vans, or a school bus when needed. And it's also, we work with other school districts and transporting kids and charge a fee. So that's that account. Right now, we have 3 children that we're transporting for another school district for FY19. And I forecasted an expense of a van, because we'll probably be in need of a van at the end of the year.
So the FY19 balance is best, that column right now is best guess at where we'll end.
At 78,000, yes.
And so on the school lunch, best guess right now, you see it going down about 20 grand. Am I misreading that?
No,
No, right.
And does it move that, you would expect it to move that much from year to year, or is there?
these are just estimates.
Estimates.
Part of that is potential having to pay retirement benefits for health care. So we didn't have to pay that this year, but we have that allocated as well. So that's
Okay,
potential.
So it's best estimate, but you would expect it to go down because you do foresee some additional expense.
Potentially, yes.
And then the middle school theater, high school theater, those are smaller accounts. That's run by the theater department and always.
So any money they collect from their performances, last year they made a big purchase to get hands-free microphone, head-free, whatever, microphone systems. So it's their money, and they use it just specifically for the theater program.
And then we have our school choice account. So this includes the transfer that you just approved. So for FY18, we started the year at $674,580. And with the transfer we just made, we're ending at $796,877. So forecasting for next year, we'll come in at forecasting at $691,877. So then we have our preschool account. We started the year at $15,266, and we ended it at $21,713.
Can I jump? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
The allocation is 330 in FY19. What was it?
For school choice,
Yeah, in 18.
it was 330.
It was 330 there.
No, it wasn't 330. Well, it was.
Well, for
and,
salaries, it was.
and then we did an additional, I want to say $100,000 for items you voted in June, one-time items like NEASC and a couple of other things. So that was more than that.
That 15,000 expenses, that 3 students, what is that against school choice?
We leave that money there, so at the end of the year, when we close the books are closed now. So we have a vendor that repaired a furnace for $15,000 or $10,000, but it didn't get into this year's budget, the only place we can take that money from is school choice. So we just leave a cushion there for any bills that come in after we close the books from 18.
Because once 18 is closed, you can't
Right.
create an entry to.
Student activities,
I just want to make one other point about preschool. And you saw that, the revolving count went up. So this was the first year we offered full-day pre-K. And so we received more revenue than we did the previous year. So we'll monitor that as well. And that's used just to offset the preschool salaries.
so student activities started at $70,674, and we ended the year at $96,119. Now, this is our athletic fees. So we pay the coaches out of this line item. So next year, we're forecasted to come in at $95,819. We just have the coaches allocation for that.
And there's no ramification of this increasing, right? I mean, it's my understanding we can't charge more than the actual expense for something like sports fees, and at first blush, this would almost look like we did.
No, when you break out sports,
Right.
we're not going to be over
But-
in any.
But given that that's the case, what it really implies is we didn't apply these fees as much as we might have.
Isn't this usually in relation to like gate fees and stuff like
No,
that?
this is strictly,
Athletic fees, yeah?
we brought in
We'll cover it below.
$21,000 more than we estimated. We brought in 162 last year, 162,000. That's why it went up by,
So
That
I'm
amount of
sorry, I thought we started the year at 70 and ended the year at 96 in the account with the books closed. Did I misread that?
yes, that's correct.
So that means we ended the year with 20 grand more
Correct.
in the account.
Right.
If they're athletic fees, my understanding is we can only charge the cost or less, right? So we clearly applied
Less.
funds from somewhere else. There's no implication there. The fact that we collected them and we kept it in that account, it's easy enough to show folks, yeah,
Yes.
but keep in mind.
Yes.
Okay.
The next account is the before and after care. Started the year at $154,437 and ended at $172,651. And we're forecasted to end the year at $172,000. So keep in mind, when this account closes, we're still offering summer care. So you're still collecting and expensing money out. And the summer expenses, all that still play.
That when you really do end up with a day where you have to close and move over to the next year, or
No, it just keeps on going.
because it's out of the revolving fund, right?
But what I'm saying is a lot of the fees might have been collected in 18, but
Yeah.
then the expenses are later. So the circuit breaker, that includes the transfer that you just approved. We started the year at $233,745, and we ended at $143,562. So next year, well, this year for the income, I was conservative with it, and I put as receiving 65%. So it ends the year at $159,153, which I do think it will probably come in higher than that, but I was conservative with the income.
I'm anticipating this is going to come in probably around $415,000. It's probably going to come around 72%. So I think that's more realistic.
When folks can't get the radio station changed fast enough and they hear things like circuit breakers going to be funded at 72%.
Correct.
It's this line right here that going from 65 to 72.
The next
And
line
that's
item
good.
is the bus fees.
That's good.
We started the year at $32,215 and ended the year at $52,442. And next year, I forecasted as coming out at $47,442.
Now, on this one, remember, we're collecting bus fees for the following year in May and June, and that's why the number's increased. We'll spend that out.
And then we move down to the athletic revolving. So we started the year at $26,985 and ended the year at $26,342. And then next year, forecasting to come out at $26,342. Now, this is the account that has the gate fees, and it used to be used for football. So that's why the income's higher. And then you'll see for 19, it's only the 3,000 in and out. That's for the ticket takers and gate fees and all that.
The income is actually forecasted to go up, right? We had 900 income in 17, and you're showing
Yeah,
3,000.
We're gonna have to make a journal entry change. When we looked at this over the last couple of weeks, the money that we received from gate receipts went into the wrong account. And so we'll be coming back to you to show you the total amount of gate receipts that were received this past year. Gate receipts
the
didn't go in this year.
problem is in the income in 17.
Correct. In 18 is inaccurate.
Sorry, yeah, I keep reading 17, but that, yeah.
Roughly
yeah,
the same amount.
Can't
yeah,
be.
it's
1,000 or
not- it's
so.
like, yeah, it's probably 2,500.
So again, it's still less than what you're forecasting for 19.
No, I would say if you look at all of football and basketball, those two combined will bring in more than $3,000 to cover all the ticket takers,
In which year?
all the people that
You
work
think,
on sporting
you think
events.
that the 18 entry is going to be far larger than 3,000?
I think it'll be larger than 3,000. Where it says here, it says 900, it was more than $3,000.
And you're gonna bring that
Football-
back next
We'll
meeting?
bring that back, yes. Exactly what was brought in.
Remember, parents get in free now.
Parents do get in free now. No, they don't. They pay a $300 sports fee.
Then we have school use. That is our renting out the facilities. It started the year at $37,583 and ended the year at $51,928. Forecasting it out is difficult because you don't know what's to come, but forecasted it out to come in at $31,928. Student parking started the year at $51,341, ended the year at $55,323. And then forecasting for next year to come out at $43,323.
It's not all those stickers the school resource officer had you buy it.
I've got mine.
Summer camp, we started the year at $40,819, ended the year at $52,356. And forecasting for next year to end the year at $56,356.
So again, these are nice places when we hit, like, so for instance, the parking lot repairs. I'm gonna be recommending to the school committee that we use student parking revolving to cover that because it's directly related to that revolving account. So those are nice, healthy balances for us.
Gifts and donations. Started the year at $40,939, ended the year at $37,344. and forecasting FY19 to come in at $30,344. So the money in gifts and donations is all allocated for, that's a mix of all the schools, and each of them are allocated. Then we have band revolving, that's one of our self-sustaining accounts for band. Started at $4,384 and ended the year at $1,000. And they'll do fundraising and their own things throughout the year. And then our lost book is another small account that we just use, charge a fee for lost books and use that to replace them. Started the year at $790 and ended the year at $1,094. Then we go into our capital accounts. So we had our FY18, we had asbestos account and ended the year at $2,063. Sorry, and started the year at $13,438. Technology started at $16,938 and ended at $9,784. The boiler, we spent that out, that was for $100,000, we spent $100,000. No, I said that wrong. The boiler was $100,000 and it hasn't cleared yet, so there's still $100,000 remaining.
On these special article, if we don't spend it in the year, it would go back to the
Correct.
It no longer is available, is that?
Right.
So where you show an ending balance, this isn't really an ending balance, this is money that
This is going back to the town.
for the general town funding wasn't
Right.
spent.
Correct. Now, there are some capital articles that are allowed to go multiple years. So for instance, asbestos is used through multiple years as we need to use asbestos, and we'll probably seek to get more money in that. The sidewalk repair, we haven't been able to do the sidewalk repair.
But would you have to go back and get it reallocated from the town?
I do not believe so. I believe that Mr. Smith just plans on bidding that out again this spring to see if we can't actually get someone to bid that repair.
If you look below, it is in the FY19 capital account, they put it back in.
So when the FY19 budget was approved,
That was
they reallocated money in there. Sorry.
all right.
The beginning balance for those is really the balance we're working with. Like for
That's what-
the sidewalk, where you ended in 18 is just how much of it was spent. The start point really is how it was funded for 19, the next lines below.
Correct.
Correct.
Thanks.
Yep. Then we have building security was 20,000, and then we have $448 remaining. The wastewater treatment plant filters was 33,000 and $3,085 remaining.
I do want to point out, as you look at 19, the smart board lease, it was really, it was fantastic that the town supported this, because as you went down the hallway when they were replacing these smart boards, here I see an overhead transparency machine, and you're thinking there have been people with smart boards in their classrooms for 5 and 6 years, and there were teachers still using these overhead transparency machines. And it just wasn't right. It wasn't, so it was great that Jim Smith recommended purchasing these through a 3-year lease. But when you go through and you see the technology in our classrooms now, it's just state of the art. It's fantastic.
That's it for our articles, and then I listed the FY19 articles. Ted just went over one of them. You have the sidewalk repair, smart board lease, the ELC oil delivery system, and the wastewater treatment plant membranes. And then lastly, I just put down the balances for our student activity accounts in each school. So the ELC has $29,985. Elementary has $8,911. Middle school, $4,155. And the high school has $27,426.
And again, what's very important about student activity fees is that they are specific for student activities and the accounts that they fall under. You cannot go and buy sandwiches at the center store out of the student activity fee and then reimburse the student activity accounts. This is how school districts get in lots of trouble. We do an internal audit every 2 years, every year, and every 3 years we have an outside auditing firm that comes in and audits these accounts. Every time that happens, there's always a couple of things that we need to do a little bit better, but overall we have a good handle on it. Which actually is a nice segue into the conversation about online payments of activity fees, because it ties right to this type.
This, this can be dry. It was really, I think, done very well, easy. It drives a, well, it may be dry, but a good conversation, and I think very good visibility to what's happening. So I appreciate it.
And all these documents are public documents. They're reported out in all of our minutes from our school committee meetings, so any community member can look at these documents.
And it's in the package. If you didn't pull down your package before the 3 people were watching, you can pull down the package and see.
Still there.
You should have some way to online pay activity fees or something.
Well, here we go.
So, we're seeking a recommendation from the committee in regards to switching to online payments for all fees. In the past, most fees have been collected by cash and check. Our online payment system is through Unipay. Unipay charges 25 cents to process an online electric check and has a larger fee scale if a credit card is used. The credit cards that they take are MasterCard, American Express, and Discover. The fees range from $2.50 for up to a $100 payment, $5 for up, $2.50 for up to a $100 payment, $5 up to a $200 payment, $10 up to a $400 payment, and $17.50 for a $700 payment. I would like to recommend that the 25-cent fee for the electronic online check be paid from the building use revolving account, and that the majority of the payments are made online. This will make the process much easier for our school advisors, our administrators, support personnel, the business office, and the town. We currently collect a large quantity of checks in cash, and this will make the process less entailed. We will be able to print current reports with up-to-date payment information without having to create spreadsheets and count money.
How many checks bounce?
A couple per month.
So right there, that's your 25 cents if we're paying.
And you add to it the potential that if you receive that stuff, not that it's intentional or in any way, but the transition between receiving it, sticking in a kid's bag, and it stays there for a month,
Or
whatever.
two.
When it's done online, it's
It's
moved right
done.
to the account.
Does it avoid
Yeah.
an awkward phone call as well?
Yes.
So it's gonna cut down
It
on all
helps
the
advisors a
administrators.
lot.
Yeah.
Advisors definitely,
Yep.
So
And
we would absorb the 25 cents on a check, but if somebody wanted to pay with a credit card, that fee, do we still absorb, or we wouldn't make that
No, we
available?
don't- the
It's-
parents would have to pay that fee.
So would it be available to pay by credit card if they wanted, but they would pay the additional service fee?
Right,
On the check, as they're writing the check, they wouldn't have to,
right. You
Add the
can plug
25
in your
cents.
routing number and account number,
Yeah.
and there'll be no
Yeah.
fee to the parent if they choose that option.
I think that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Is chasing around one bounce check $35? Really? Yeah.
It, in the ideal world, if we could do this, think about, so a field trip takes place. The teachers collect the field trip money. They count the money. They give it to the building secretary. They count the money. Then it goes to the business office. They count the money. Then it goes to the town hall and they count the money. They
Yeah,
verify.
Too many hands.
There's a lot of hands. But there are some downsides to this. If you're paying a $300 fee to play a sport and then you hit with another, and it does,
It's a $10 surcharge.
it's a $10 increase.
But you have the convenience of paying by card. That's for the convenience of paying by
Because you
by
can
card.
pay by
If you pay by
card
check,
If you wanna pay the
it's
fee and have the
$300.
convenience of
Yeah.
the card, then.
What we were originally saying, though, is that the original thought we had was this would be the only way you could do it.
I'm sorry, let me go back. If somebody wants to pay with a check, there's no charge, no service fee
Correct.
to them. If they wanted to use a charge card, the person using the charge card would be responsible for the service fee.
Correct.
Just like buying
So if
concert
it's
tickets.
$300 or something to that effect, if you don't wanna use your routing number, if you wanna use your Discover card, you're welcome to do that. There'll be an additional service fee that your card will be charged.
Correct.
Right, but they have an option that they didn't have
Yeah.
before.
What's the downside?
The downside is that people who are, one is it doesn't accept all credit cards. Visa is not accepted by this system. For those who pay, take a student has, or a family has two kids playing a couple of sports, and one of them is, one of the students is a senior in high school. One of the students is in the band. If you add that all up and they pay by credit card, except for Visa, of course, now this family could incur another $125 in charges on top of the fees that we already
Right.
charge
Right,
people.
They
but-
don't have the ability to send in a check. What we're saying is you won't be able to mail in the check, you'd have to electronically submit the check.
So, but-
Which, and then the other part is, again, with identity theft and all that sort of stuff, those that don't want to put their routing number and that stuff out, they don't, there's no avenue for those people to pay
otherwise,
by check.
Got it.
I would agree to this system, and if we would allow people who wanted to pay by check, that they could still pay by paper check, but you're forcing people in to pay a fee to make your life easier, and I think we charge enough fees for everybody
Well-
already.
right, but we
Sorry.
won't charge for fees for the way that we used to, which was if we were collecting checks. Were the majority of payments by check, or were they cash?
We don't accept credit card now,
No.
so
Well,
that's a
we-
completely
our
new
bus fees,
option.
like, very limited. We
Yeah.
use it very limited.
But, so I think that's the thing, when we talk about fees related to credit cards, we're not accepting credit cards now.
I don't
currently
understand
for
that,
sports
I don't think the
fees.
credit card piece is kind of besides the
Yep,
point.
yep.
I would interpret it as, prior to this, you could send a check, a physical check into the school system, and the school system would run it into the bank.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're saying you don't have that available, what you'd have to do is make your routing and account number visible to Unibank's system. And you might not feel that's as secure, it's less secure. If you chose not to do that, then the only alternative would be a fee. Is that,
Then the only alternative under this system would be to use a credit card, and then you incur
pay
that
the
fee.
Yeah.
And if people want to use a credit card and pay that additional fee, they're certainly welcome to do it, but I don't think that we should force people into that. I think that again, I think we pay enough in fees already. I think that, people who want to write a check and deliver it that way should be allowed to continue to write a check and deliver it that way and not have to pay this additional assessment for their kids to participate or enjoy some of the benefits. A yearbook,
For
a
me,
cap and gown, a field trip, a class trip, anything like that. Two kids in school, you could run into $150 in additional fees, and I think that we pay enough in fees already.
we haven't forced them into a fee. What we've forced them into doing is providing their account information on what we believe is a secure system through Unibank.
Because
There's-
the
you don't have
fee
to use
doesn't
credit card.
change in that regard.
There's-
The fee that anybody would be paying is the convenience to use a credit card. Because right now, without that system, you pay check or
Check,
cash.
cash.
Correct.
That's
Yep.
it. So now, I'm with you for a lot of it in regards to, confidentiality or protection of their data. If you're not comfortable with that, yeah, the only other avenue would be you send a check in. But that's the question, if that's still
We don't have the
possible.
ability to do both, to do the online check and to send a physical check if they prefer.
Well, that's what we're debating.
That's
Yeah,
what we're
that's
debating.
That's
Well,
what this
because
is
it-
about.
I was
That's-
leaning towards, I would prefer everything online.
Of course, it sounds,
Yeah.
but to Bruce's point, if
Right.
55% of the people want to send it in electronically, that's still going to save you a lot of time. because you're gonna have a number, and then the paper checks and the cash,
What are
it's
you
still
look-
the same
Yeah.
system.
Are you more likely to get the people to bounce checks who are gonna write the checks versus go online? Yes.
That's really not a big problem.
I-
We don't
I
have,
know.
we don't have
I
a
know,
really
but I'm
big
just
issue
saying, I mean,
there.
that's just another one of the hassles, so there's
But I
that
don't think you
challenge
can
in there.
penalize everybody for those that
What
bounce checks.
Checks, I agree.
what we
I
really
agree.
wanna
But
do is
I know
get,
it works, the town
we'd love to
uses it.
see more and more people, so that we're, less
Not a-
people handling money is what we're trying to get at.
What will it cost to us to do this? To
It
start?
doesn't
other
cost
than-
us
other than the
anything.
Well,
It costs people who access the,
Right, so but it'll cost us 25 cents per e-check transaction.
correct.
Yes.
So that's really, so we could
That's it.
trial it and see how it goes. The town already has it for your
I-
tax payments. I've
We're,
used
we're
it.
gonna do this.
Yeah,
I mean, this is,
Okay,
this,
then-
we're definitely gonna do this. The question becomes, how aggressive are we with the demand to use our system is
Right.
really the
So
question.
Yeah.
is it acceptable to send in a paycheck,
Check.
or do you want a policy that says you
Yeah.
only accept funds through
Right.
the electronic checks,
I think
right? I
we
mean,
have
that's
to-
ultimately the question.
Yeah.
It was
you have
already
to-
forced on one
Right.
group.
I think you have to test it
Yeah, so-
by,
Oh.
by accepting the current and trying the new and see
See
what
what-
the ratios are.
yeah.
So you've looked at the system. Does it allow you any tracking that can somehow be reported back to the parents? Like if I'm a parent, say, and I'm like, geez, pretty sure I made that payment. Aside from maybe jotting a note in the memo
They
section
get a
if they allow it.
confirmation. They should get a confirmation.
Sure, you get a confirmation, but is there some way to then go back in for your child's iPass or something like that to say, yeah, okay, you're on this and you've
I
paid
think
that?
it does.
I don't
think-
know.
I think that
That's what I'm
does.
curious about, because I think
I can
everybody has
probably
good
do that.
intentions and then like, they didn't pay and
Not with
they forgot.
iPass, but
Well, something to that.
So, I'm sorry. What we're asking you now, I hear you loud and clear, I think. And so, but what you have to authorize for us is to pay the 25 cents. I think that would be the only thing we'd be looking for from the school committee for
Is-
right now.
If the school department is going to stop accepting cash and physical check payments, is that a policy change, or is that something you could choose to do without policy?
I don't know the answer to that.
And what's the agenda item or motion or the 25-cent charge that we're talking about? Honestly, I'm feeling a little bit like I came into this conversation late. I think I caught up. But
I think the motion would be to, for those who, if we do go to this system, would be to, anytime someone uses an e-check using this Unipay system and incurs the 25-cent fee, whatever that charge is actually reduced 25 cents, and the 25 cents comes from the building use.
Correct.
point of order,
However, I
get it
don't know
on the
that we can
agenda.
do it
It's
'cause
not
it's
on
not
the
an
agenda.
item.
Oh, is that on the agenda?
Maybe I missed it.
It's on the agenda, it's not on the,
What item
it's
is it?
not on the
Not on the briefing.
briefing sheet.
Oh, so
It's
it's
on
on
the
the regular
briefing sheet?
agenda.
It's not on the briefing sheet.
Where is it on the agenda?
No,
Is
Item
that on?
10.
you just had me add it for discussion, online payment, so I didn't do a motion.
It's okay if there's no motion. If it's on as an agenda item, we can address it. The briefing sheet, I think most of us print this out because it's
So
a lot
that's
of the cheat
my
sheet.
bad, I went right to the briefing sheet.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
let's get
So then
those
we're good.
sent up.
So it's item
Now I got
10
it.
on the agenda, the second bullet point.
And there's-
So it is on the agenda, I'm sorry.
Yeah, my bad, I read the briefing sheet, which I thought was in sync with the agenda, but it is not.
So will they have access to my account, the login information for this pay? Because that'll give you bill history and all of that.
who
Will the parent have access? Will it be using the same, it'll be using the same system that the town uses right now for their online payments, correct?
It's a comment.
I'm not familiar with what the town uses.
The town uses Unibag too,
Yeah.
Unibank or Unipay?
Unibag.
I know they use the same bank as we do, so.
Okay.
So it must be the same system, but I haven't reviewed it to, I don't want to answer if I don't know 100%.
Mm.
This to me is a field trip form went out. We were gonna bring this to the committee at the last school committee meeting, and we didn't put on the agenda, and then a field trip form went out and said that you'd have to pay online, which kind of jumped the whole process.
What was the feedback from that?
From one person, very concerning. And his wife.
It was very concerning.
And so I had a long conversation with that individual in my office, and you know, that's the whole point of this. When we were talking about it, we had 3 like-minded people batting this around, and we only saw the positives to it from our point of view. And then someone else comes at it from a different angle, you realize, oh man, we didn't consider that.
So I go back to, how do you get an answer on the question of, is this a policy decision or is this an administration decision?
I think this is a procedural decision, how we collect money.
It's not policy.
Procedure.
I think if we switch to you can no longer do it the old way, maybe you're touching on that, but I think it sounds like the talk amongst the room is you still allow all the same options, however.
Not my talks amongst the room, right? And I'd like some fundamental information around that before
I went through the policies and I didn't see anything on,
Payment, yeah.
on payment systems.
right.
And
Might
that
be
was
that
the
you could,
policies that we were given last year.
And it may be that you could add a policy, right? It might be that it's appropriate that we say we want to add a policy. Before we get too deep into that, I'd like to make sure that that's.
I would say, though, that if you were gonna say that you had to pay by online check or credit card, and that's the only way you can pay, I would say that would have to be a policy. That would be, in my opinion, a policy.
That's different than
Yeah.
what I heard a minute ago.
It is, well, because I thought about it and I realized, because we're mandating one way to pay,
By check or credit card.
by check or credit card.
Electronic check.
Only if we were mandating, but in this case, what we're saying is.
Well, we did.
retain.
We sent out a note and we mandated. That's how we got here.
That's how we got here. That, and I would love that from running a business, from running an accounting system and all that. I would love that, but there were a lot of valid points made that if someone chooses to pay credit card and they have 2 or 3 kids and they're going on field trips and they're doing all of these things, so
Choice.
that made me think.
Decisions.
Decision, yeah.
So if this pay system is an option, and people can still pay with a check and sent in or dropped off at the school. If people want to pay that surcharge for
Right.
convenience, God bless them.
You could.
But for
you could
those that
start-
don't, they shouldn't.
And you could start, I mean, maybe it doesn't, maybe they don't offer it without the credit card option, but you could start with just the personal check, cash,
If you
or the
can-
online
If
check.
you have to have both open, does that cause you to have more work in trying to keep track of how the payment was made?
No.
So you can collect a paper check and an electronic check,
Sure.
and,
You
and
can, you can. Does it make it a little more?
well, this is what I asked, is it
Yes,
more
because you'll
work?
have-
Because
You'll
at a
have
quarter
two
a check,
reports.
it sounds like you got money coming from 2 different places, and how you tie those off, or where the checklist is that
'Cause
says,
somebody's gonna come and
junior
say, well,
paid.
did you get my sports fee? And then now you're
Right.
gonna be checking online, and then you're gonna be,
So,
But-
when somebody
but if
pays
they're literally
online, does
some
it
of the
tie to your
paper
systems?
handling and some of the
yeah,
cash
the back end of
handling.
it is amazing for us. We
Oh.
can just, I done a lot with it this year where like I split out all the sports. So now if you go into basketball, even though we're not doing basketball right now, you just click the basketball button and it prints everybody who paid by the name with the amount, and you got your roster.
Because if you make an electronic
Right.
payment, you say what you're paying for, it
Right.
isn't just to the,
Otherwise, you'll be seeing, okay, this person gave me cash, this person gave, so the back end's great.
Is it something where a parent who has made multiple payments to different kids' programs could look back and see?
that's
That's-
all my
That's what I gotta
question.
look into.
That would be,
I know my
as a
end of
parent
it,
with
and
3
I
kids and
don't-
3 schools,
I can't imagine. You can't
If
do
it's
that.
set up like the town side, you can
I think
access
you
your
must
payment
be.
history.
Right. And I would imagine it would be set up that way, cause it's the
I'm
same
assuming
system,
too, but who knows?
but I don't wanna presume.
Yeah.
So that is something I
Cause-
I will ask.
And I think that's what I was
Yeah.
trying to ask earlier, because as a parent with multiple kids, There can be some confusion. We wanna make
Who
sure
got
you're up
paid
to
what?
date and good
Yeah.
standing, but,
Yep.
yeah,
Right.
okay.
I will look into that.
So this brings us to, I don't think we need to have a vote if we're going to allow this option to be,
I'm pretty sure we already
Implemented.
paid through
It's-
the online system for sports, so True.
I mean, that online system was there when I started for the
Yeah.
bus fees and sports.
So
We
is
just
this
wanna
more
use
than a
it more
discussion, or?
than we added it.
I don't know.
if it's going to be just, if that's gonna be the only avenue that you can pay,
Yeah.
then I think there has to be a policy and a vote. If it's an option, I think then, and if we are going to consider the second part, and that is to take the 25% e-check fee, which I have some issues that you're only gonna pay for the people who do the checks and not the people doing the credit card, from the building use account. That, I think that has to be a motion that has to be voted.
How did we pay the 25-cent fee in the past?
The parent paid.
You didn't.
The parent paid it. So if it was a $10 fee, they would have to pay $10.25.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And the notion here is you want to remove that
This is how to
25
encourage
cent
them to use
to
online.
encourage them to use it. And there's no, again, we're working off of an interesting discussion of one beating you took because of the way it was worded. I don't know how you present how you're gonna absorb that 25 cents, but I haven't seen where you're absorbing it from yet, nor an estimate of what you think you're gonna absorb. I get it, it's $112 over the course of the year, but we're not working with much here. We're working with an issue that got discussed a lot before, to me, my bad for not reading the agenda, just going to the briefing, but we're not working with much here.
So could I make a recommendation that we come back on October 1st? I will check with MASC to see if there's a policy, whether this is something that needs to be policy or whether this is something that's practice and that can be an administrative decision.
And a proposal with, as we've done, and as we see in the briefing sheets, with a proposed motion. If we want to make a change, if we want to do something with a proposed motion that shows it's had enough thought into it around, what are we trying to solve? What are we trying to sort? What direction are we trying to get at? This is more of an interesting discussion without a endpoint, as near as I could tell.
And also have to have an estimate of what we think how much money is gonna be withdrawn from the building use fund.
I think there's a lot of prep work for a motion for the entire committee that should have been in place for this.
When you look at that, you might even be able to answer now, on a credit card, if somebody pays a $300 sports fee, does the school get $300?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So if we're having this discussion, another thing that we talked about when I did a preschool committee meeting was the idea of, do we even talk about, once we calculate how many fees we collect, do we look at offsetting some of the costs? That's another option that the committee might want to consider. And I don't know if they want to do that. Allow us to get all the detail with you. Let us get all the details. We'll come back on October 1st.
What's that? Next item on the agenda is to approve purchase of shirts for custodians.
So as I mentioned at the last meeting, I believe that as part of our safety plan, that we purchase 5 shirts for each custodian and another 10 shirts for sub-custodians so that they're easily identified. When people come into the building and people see our custodians, they know they're part of the reason is for them to wear lanyards, climbing up ladders. We don't want that to be the case. So I'm looking out of building use to authorize to purchase these shirts for our custodial staff.
And this does come from an incident last year.
It did. It came from an incident where we had one of our student custodians in our field dressed all in black in the summer. I mean, in June,
With the hood.
with a hood, and it was reported that a suspicious person.
But it wasn't a custodian with his lanyard caught in a
It
ladder.
wasn't.
So that's-
Well,
That's
that's
wouldn't actually solve that, but the point is when the kids are familiar, you can recognize the shirt from a distance.
Just-
Put staff on the back or something like that.
and just building use. Many people that use the buildings, they come in. The only person here is a custodian.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice for our custodians to look, easily identified.
I move to approve using $1,100 from the building use account to purchase shirts for the custodian and substitute custodians as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Next item is to approve an increase of salary for the middle school principal.
So, let me just, a portion of a grant that paid for Mr. Goyette's salary of $2,000 we're no longer able to use that grant in that way. And so basically, Mr. Goyette would be, that's how we were paying his overall salary. It's because that grant went away, that portion of that grant, I'm recommending that the committee, out of operation funds, offset that $2,000 and pay for it out of operational money.
I make the
Motion?
motion. I do have a question, but I would move to approve a one-time increase in salary in the amount of $2,000 for the middle school principal as recommended by the superintendent.
Second.
Discussion.
Does this change what the middle school principal would report? So there was amount of money that was coming from a grant, but this is now an additional $2,000 that would go towards retirement salaries and things of that
Correct.
nature. So there is some benefit. It's small and it's deserved. I appreciate how you're trying to make sure that the annual, but there is a little difference to it, yeah.
Yes.
Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Next item is to approve an increase of the daily rate for substitute teachers.
So we did a survey, right now at $75, where we're bumping up against the minimum wage. We're bumping up against getting people to work here. We did a survey of various school districts. The average is $80 a day, and so we're recommending that we bump it up. We did look at our last year's expenditure, and if we upped it by $5, we would still be able to, in our current budget, be able to afford to pay this $80.
Would you like to make a motion?
Move to approve the increase in a rate of pay for substitute teachers from $75 a day to $80 a day, as recommended by the superintendent.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Based on last year's use of substitutes, how much would this, what would the impact on the,
I had that number in, I don't want to say the number because it has escaped me. So I don't want to say something and then it be completely wrong. So,
are we
It
talking
was-
about something in the neighborhood of $10,000?
no,
No,
no, in the neighborhood of half of that.
okay.
It's about a 7% on that line.
Gotta have good substitutes.
I want to say it's like $8,000.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Passes 5-0. Next motion is to appoint members to subcommittees. We have 3 committees that we need folks to participate in. Let's start with the Vision Committee. Based on the discussion I heard at last meeting, I think everybody wants to participate in that.
It's
Mr.
got broccoli, asparagus, chocolate sundaes.
Exactly. We're gonna do chocolate sundaes first. And I think, talking to Ted, I think that, I don't think that there would be any problem with everybody participating. There are 4 schools. We might be able to break people up and have one person represent each school or attend with each school as well. If that's acceptable to everybody, then we'll all participate on the vision committee.
Cool.
Are there any members who are interested in participating on the SESA negotiations subcommittee? I need 2.
I'll do whatever you want.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I can help with that.
All right. Then it will be Paul and Nate. And I guess on the communications subcommittee,
Okay.
I guess that would be Kristen and Peter. Wow, that would
Depends on,
a lot easier than I thought it would go. That's wonderful. Thank you.
It's the all-inclusive first
yeah.
one. It's the big seller.
You got the asparagus.
I don't know. You got the Brussels sprouts.
If Peter got the asparagus, he did a very good year with a very good job with it last year. So I think you can grow off of the work that you did last year with that, because that worked out really well. So thank you. Next item on the agenda is review and first reading of policies. There were 3 policies that came out. A meal charging, a student submission to education surveys, and parental notification relative to sex education. So, I'm not sure how we handle policies. Does anybody have any comment? Does everybody want to take time to read these and provide? There have to be 3 readings before anything gets changed, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
That's correct.
So,
So this is a first reading. I do want to make just a couple of changes on the meal changing policy, just 3-word changes, if I could.
Sure.
In the second paragraph, 2 lines where it says regular meal on the second line, will provide a regular meal. We want to change that to reimbursable meal.
I don't disagree. I don't know where you are.
Yeah, you said
The
it's
Second paragraph.
under meal charges and balances?
right there.
No,
above
the
it.
Yep.
second
Just
paragraph.
above it?
Just
second
that
paragraph in the
little
policy.
I couldn't
Paragraph.
find regular. In 12 words, I couldn't find it.
I'm sorry.
I'm there now. Thank you.
The very last paragraph on the first page, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down, it should say school food service director, not manager. That would be confusing, as we have kitchen managers and it's food service director. And then 2 lines further down, the first word weekly, we would like to change that to monthly. It just seems sending people a weekly reminder because their balance is low it's not necessary, because some people pay monthly.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're just,
Well, but if you pay monthly, you wouldn't get it till that last week, would you?
yeah, I just think if I still have money in my account and I'm getting,
Low balance.
Low balance
alerts.
reminders.
What triggers a low balance email?
when they have a low balance.
What's a low balance?
It's a low balance.
Well, that's something that we would determine procedurally.
I'm just thinking, so if you pay monthly, and just for giggles, let's say that low balance
I would
is
say
$250.
two lunches.
Yeah,
I would
Then
say
you shouldn't get the email until the last week.
I'm going off the recommendation of the food
2 lunches,
service
so
director.
if you
Yeah,
have 2
I-
lunches left in your account.
I guess that's
$6.
one I would want to talk about a little bit. My concern is, if you spread that time out, do we set ourselves up for things got out of whack again?
No, we still send out, when someone, this is different.
Okay?
So when someone owes money, they automatically get a notice.
this is just the low.
To give you an idea, right now, our balance, school lunch balance shortfall is $2,300.
Much better than
Last year was
11,000.
$12,000.
I-
So we've got it all cleaned up. This is strictly, I worry about the email notice fatigue.
I don't understand how, if this is an email that's triggered by a low balance, this causes extra email, whether it's weekly or monthly. I'm missing something about the mechanics of it, I
This-
think.
So if you only have $10 in your account,
Yeah.
you get an email.
Okay.
Now the kid has lunch 3 more times, then they get another email. Now they have 1 lunch left, now they get another email. So it'll just keep until they replenish.
Which will give them 3 warnings before they have no money and they're on to cheese.
Right.
No.
No cheese, no cheese.
You got the point. We've got it locked down so that we're not gonna go in the red. But if a low balance warning, the way I think of a low balance warning works, you can set that dial, and if it's at 2 lunches, it's not how you described, it's 2 lunches into it. You got an email Tuesday, and you got an email Wednesday, Thursday, you had a problem.
So, and that's what's throwing me off, because we're saying monthly. I know I get those when my kids secretly buy breakfast and stuff,
Breakfast is good.
you know, but you get something saying, hey, your balance is low, whatever that
Yeah.
number is. I don't remember looking at the cadence, so I wonder, do we really put in that it's a monthly thing, or that it just, because it happens automatically, right? With my
If
school
you're
bucks
over,
or-
if you're over.
Okay,
So if you're into
If
the
you owe
negative
money,
balance.
it's automatic.
Yeah.
So we automatically, that's how we got this down to where it is. This is something new where now we're being proactive
And it's
and
the
reminding
countdown.
people, you have $5 left in your lunch balance, you have a low account.
I don't
It's
understand.
kind of like the reminder you get for the Easy Pass.
But the numbers we're talking about, $5, 2 meals, in a monthly reminder strikes me as, don't bother doing it.
well, and I guess too, there's plenty of parents out there, they put a few bucks in, their kids never eat lunch. They're on a monthly basis gonna get a reminder, you have a low balance. Do you hear from those people frustrated saying, why am I getting this? My kid doesn't eat lunch. I don't know, just throwing it out there.
Okay, so maybe that's somebody who's got the $4 on their Dunkin' Donuts card but doesn't go there anymore.
Yeah.
Stop bothering me, just take the $4. How many?
And the kids are told when they have a low balance as they're checking out too.
Yeah, all that comes up.
Do we
Maybe
just,
that-
do we just take out weekly and monthly and just put
As
something
applicable.
generic?
As
Well, if it's-
applicable.
if it's
applicable.
automated.
Email notices, if
As
applicable.
applicable.
Yeah, just take out weekly completely.
Take out the
As
the
applicable.
frequency.
See, because when I went over this with our new food service director, I mean, everybody gets nervous when they talk policy, but what I try to explain, policy is a broad understanding of something, and then because she had a bunch of other changes, said, no, we keep it this, then we make procedure off of the policy. So if applicable, then we determine the cadence at which these go out.
The setup you might find is, the committee is setting policy that you will have an automated low balance email. And if what's really going on is somebody is saying, oh gosh, it's a royal pain in the hoo-haws to do this manually, then you're out of policy and we ought to change the policy. And then I'm back into maybe it's a monthly review because it's a manual process.
We have a lot of policies that are written in that extremely gray way.
Yeah,
The line in here that really makes me laugh at this whole policy is the one that says any remaining funds for a
yes,
particular
yeah.
student, whether positive or negative, I don't know how you could have negative remaining funds, because there's nothing remaining, will be carried over to the next
school
year.
Yeah, I saw that.
So how does this policy force people to pay?
It
And
doesn't.
what are the ramifications if you don't pay for it? It doesn't, nothing's stated. You can carry over a negative balance, big deal, we don't care. Our policy is if you've got a negative balance, we just bring it to the next year. Well, that's a bad
We
policy.
shouldn't be doing that.
That's a real bad policy.
I
Back
thought
up-
we had something that would hold
Yeah.
back from receiving certain
Diploma, we
things.
talked about
Yeah.
all kinds of different things.
Which is all in the
that's not what
handbooks.
this
They
policy
do
says.
mention that.
Right, it doesn't.
This needs to be cleaned up a little bit because some of it is verbose and
But that's why we're having this
repetitious.
discussion. That's exactly what.
I think it's
Yeah.
addressed elsewhere to
Yeah.
get this, to meet this, like, graduation requirement, you have to be in good standing financially.
financially.
Which speaks to this, but it's not written in here.
And this is why when I sat down with Ted and I talked about the policies and reviewing policies every meeting, all of our policies are written in the same way And,
For a reason.
yeah, they're extremely gray. But when there's ambiguity that exists, then the ambiguity is gonna go in somebody else's way, not the school's way and not the school committee's way. And my concern is that we have these policies, and then we need to have a book of a procedure that matches this policy. And right now, we're talking about a policy that says you can carry over negative balance. Well, why would you have a policy like that in the first place?
What would you do with a negative balance?
You carry it over to the next year. That's what it says.
I'm sorry, if that policy didn't exist and the administration came and said, we've got negative balances, what should we do?
Well, then, there's gotta be something. You don't move to the next grade, you don't get a report card, you can't play or participate in school functions or something, depending on that. I mean,
We do those things as a practice.
And is
Yeah.
the,
but
if-
now we're talking about policy,
Policy.
procedure, and practice.
so,
And there's no consistency, and, again, while I understand the different shades of gray with this, I think we're just putting ourselves in a situation where somebody's gonna make a determination for one situation, and it may be something completely different for another one, and the argument's gonna be, why aren't you consistent with what you do? Where does it say what your procedure is, and what are the ramifications of all of this? And again, I think all of these policies, I spent hours on that subcommittee last year going through all of these things, and it's that same way throughout.
but on this one that we're reviewing, if the administration set a practice or process or procedure that zeroed out the accounts that were negative, gave junior a reset, and we found out about it, I think we would be frustrated, yet we would not have a policy to say, you weren't following policy, the administration zeroed out funds. So I think that in the policy, we have to make sure we give clear direction to the administration that negative balances, if you can't
Correct.
recover them, must be carried through to the next year, which this policy says.
That's what we do. That's current practice everywhere.
Now, there may be additional, right? It might be that we want to set a policy that says if a student has a negative balance, they are not allowed to have a report card. The state might have an issue with us on that one. But
They can all carry it over unless they're not going to be in the school system.
my point was that the reason why you would say you have to carry it over isn't as much our protection for the $1,200 from junior. I think it is our protection in making sure that whatever the relationship with the administration, that we're making it clear, you can't just zero out funds. If you came back to me and said, well, we zeroed them out and we started the year, it was easier, we'd say, nah.
We can't,
Yeah, but
obviously, we can't.
that's what I'm
legally-
saying, we have to have a procedure that matches up with this policy, and we don't know what that procedure is.
So, let's just step back a minute. This is a new policy. And the reason why it's a new policy is because there was huge backlash with school districts across this country, and everything is now cheese sandwich shaming children. And that
Pay
was,
your bill.
that was across the media. So in response to that, the Mass Association of School Committees said, we probably need to put out a sample policy that addresses all of these issues. Then it comes to the school committee, and we have this conversation about what do we have to do differently, or what do we want to tweak to this policy to fit the needs of Sutton. And really, in many ways, we did that in practice already. We went from a $12,000 deficit down to $2,300, and $2,300 is just a normal nickel and dime. I mean, we have a procedure in place where letter goes out at $5, gets to a dollar amount that the principal calls the family. So we have these built-in procedures already. But I like this policy in the sense that what it says is, if a child owes money, they get they get the basic meal. Someone forgets their lunch money, they get the basic components of a meal, no double lunches, no snacks, no second milk, no, just the regular, what they get. So that sets it clear, this is what you get. Now, it's on us, in practice, what we do to collect that money, and we have a system in place to do that. So I don't think this radically changes, and but we can't, we have to carry over the deficit. If they don't pay us, someone doesn't pay us, we carry over the deficit because we can't have a negative balance in our account, so we eventually have to pay that, so we do carry it over.
You'd be in violation of policy if you didn't carry the balance for that student, right?
We have to carry it over, and then we have to work to get the money, and we've done a very good job of that. So the policy kind of talks in,
But does
in
that
one,
need to be there?
they tell you have to give a kid a lunch. I mean, this is what we debated today.
Failure to maintain up-to-date accounts may result in a delay of a student's extracurricular school services, especially those that are fee-based. Graduating seniors may lose the ability to participate in certain graduation-related activities. I think that's about the only place where you really talk about the consequences. The rest of these are really directives on how or what the expectation is from the committee on the administration.
Does
I
this
think-
meal charging policy apply to staff?
There's a note in here that at no point, I'm now paraphrasing, at no point can staff run a negative balance. They don't even get a cheese sandwich, is I think the way this policy reads. But we should go in and check. I skimmed it, I can't remember exactly. Where did I find that?
Yeah, no, no, the staff thing is about giving payment notices to students, but I don't think there's anything about them carrying the balance.
So this is what we do. I mean, if you look, superintendent shall ensure appropriate, so we have that in place. But if a student is without meal money on a consistent basis, the administration may investigate. This is what I talk to principals about all the time. If someone is not paying, there may be an issue at home, and we investigate and we make special arrangements for some families of need.
You're right, Bruce, it is just the staff member doesn't have to say you're delinquent.
Yeah,
So
but
there
it-
isn't any in the policy worth adding.
So, but we also have the cross-reference down here. And I haven't had a chance to look
Oh.
at that, and I wonder if that references, if
Fair
you're
enough.
not in good financial standing with accounts, it'll cause issue with sports or other
Fines
things.
and charges.
But, I mean, I always struggle with this because I like to leave a little bit of a gray area to allow the staff to do what they need to do, but at the same time, do we need to put something in there so specific that says a negative balance that equals 1 month worth of lunches or something like that? I don't know, is that too specific?
You couldn't do that with this policy. This policy would not allow that to happen.
Not to
you-
say you get lunch taken away, that's when penalties kick in for other things, when it comes to field trip participation or whatever. Like, what is that? What is that point?
Again,
I don't know.
I read this policy and I say, well, what's the incentive for someone to pay their meal balances if you're gonna give them a regular lunch, whatever the basic lunch is? I mean, that's what this says, but they can run a balance and all they have to do is deal with emails.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
We
to me,
don't-
there's no incentive
To pay.
to pay for lunch. That's what I read out of this.
And I would say that the practice that we have in place has really gotten ahead of all of that. And we know everybody. We're small enough where we know every family. And so I think if we were a larger organization, a larger school system, I would worry about that. But where we know every family and we would know, and we know the handful of kids that might try to take advantage of this, and we know them.
And the trade-off is the child who's not getting a lunch or is getting the cheese sandwich shaming because of the financial planning of the parents. I don't think any government organization ought to take it out on the kids.
Yep.
That just smacks really close to me of something that we don't do,
So,
ever.
I would agree that you don't take it out on the kid, but again, what's the incentive for the parent to pay then?
So let's work on that. If there's a problem, I'm hearing there isn't and that it's been corrected. But let's not work on that through what are we doing to the kids?
and I think under that delinquent accounts collection, that's where it speaks to it,
It's just
It's
too
just a
small of a
failure.
community.
to maintain. And it just speaks to extracurricular, which, kinda is broad, but.
But that's gonna be less likely your third grader and more likely your 11th grader.
Yep.
What year minor do we take it out on the kids? The 10th grader? It's all right there?
No, well, I don't, I mean, and it doesn't give anything definitive, but there's gotta be, there is gotta be.
You think this might go a while?
Your head's running out. But there's gotta be a consequence.
Absolutely.
Parents are gonna step up to the plate and take care of the stuff that's theirs. So how do you get at the parents?
Well, I think what Ken's saying is
They,
the situation is better than it was last year.
right,
And we're working in the right direction. If it starts to go in the other direction, then I think you need to add penalties and such like that in here. But right now, it seems to be working in the right
But
direction.
that's what we should be that's what a policy should have in place.
To your point, Bruce, you can read this and say, if I don't pay, it's just some emails. Like, you would hope people wouldn't do that, but that's,
but,
okay, I can ignore those. If that's the way you
It
choose. but
sounds
you'd
like they're
hope
being
that's not the
pursued
case.
if they are.
But I don't wanna punish children from getting basic needs. That's the part I struggle with.
I agree, but again,
Where's the problem? We had a problem. We resolved the problem. We told the administration we need to understand this more frequently. We needed updates. We've seen an improvement in it.
okay,
So why are we spending time and energy where there isn't a problem?
then we don't need a policy.
Well,
Because it's been corrected.
the
Right.
policy is part of what corrected it. You're asking, I think, saying this policy isn't specific enough, doesn't identify the repercussions specifically enough. I think that's what you're saying.
No, what I'm saying is this is a statement. I don't think it's a policy. I don't read anything in here that says what has to be done, other than we're gonna give, kids can't afford a free lunch, or a kid can't afford lunch, they don't have money in their account, then we will give them whatever the basic lunch is. But they can run up a negative balance, and we're just gonna carry it over year to year, and at the end, when that $2,300 goes back up to $15,000 again, we're gonna have the same argument, we're gonna have the same discussion about, well, why is it $15,000, and how are we gonna fix that problem?
Well, it hasn't gone back up again, and there is a policy statement here that says we expect the administration to address that. There is a statement in the policy here that we expect this to be communicated to staff and parents. So we may need to tighten up the policy if we want it to be a little more specific.
That's what I'm asking for.
I mean, even if the policy was included in some beginning of the year email or
But it,
something. that
well,
went
it
home-
says right here that it's supposed to be.
It says it'll be
Right.
communicated. So you're asking for, but you said there isn't any policy, yet we said there's some, but what we need to do is tighten it up. What do you want to change?
What I'm saying is, I wanna make sure that parents just can't sit there and send their kid in and keep running up a negative balance, and at the end,
The problem with that is it's at the expense of the child. That's how we go full circle back to, so what are you gonna do to the kid when they shows up Tuesday?
So that's what came out of this. You can't see, what was happening was a child would come through the line and then a cafeteria worker or someone would say to them, you can only get a cheese sandwich. And so that hit the child. And so what this policy says is you can't do that anymore. You have to give the child a lunch. And then when I look at delinquent accounts and collections on the second page, what this points to is you're setting a general policy. And what this policy says is, as superintendent, what you're telling me is I have to have procedures in place to address your concerns. What are you doing to make sure that someone doesn't take advantage of this situation?
Absolutely.
And that's procedure.
Correct.
So this is broad enough, and now what you're looking for from me, and Di, I'll get this for the next meeting, for a second reading, is what our procedures are and how we go about collecting. So you see,
I want to see what
the
the procedure
connection
is
to
that
this.
marries up with the policy.
send out the first is an email letter to parents, and then the second is you get to a certain figure, it's this. You can't go on the 8th grade field trip unless you've paid your lunch balance. You can't go on, there's a whole bunch of things we've done.
It says it right in the policy, too.
Well-
Failure to maintain an up-to-date accounts may result in the delay of a student's may, so it's at the discretion as part of the procedure.
And it has to be May, because you can't have it be a matter of fact, because there are situations that happen where you have to make exceptions to rules, but it should be the exception and not the rule.
You also would have to go back over the policy every time you change what those repercussions are. If the policy is broad enough that we're expecting and directing the administration to utilize those things that they can, extracurricular activities, graduation things that the state isn't going to say, well, you can't hold their report card back, then coming back and saying, are you doing that as a matter of policy? Can you show us as a matter of procedure, can you show us the procedure? It's a very different question than adding that to the policy.
That's why I just want to see a procedure that marries up to
Yeah,
this.
so
That's what I want to see.
What I'll do is, I'll come to the next meeting, and I'll just give you, we have an outline of when they hit certain price points, what we do. And then, the ultimate thing is, okay, this one goes to the superintendent because it's beyond. And really, it comes down to literally a handful of situations where we work with the family. But we'll get that to you. Okay, so that's one.
So are there changes or red lines? You had 3, we talked about 2. One of them, we said maybe we just line the thing out. In the second reading, can we see a draft with those or other changes?
I would do that.
I don't have any additional markups, but others on the committee may.
Sure, and that's what you would do for the next meeting. We'll put this on the next agenda. I would, I just look, they just give you some examples, of what you can do, delay students' extracurricular, those types of, they just give a sample example, so.
I guess I'm just asking that if we start on the second reading, can we start on the second reading with proposals
Those
for
3
changes?
Committee members who have markups should send them to Di so that she can incorporate them into the policy for the second reading.
Cool.
And I guess the easiest way to do it is if there are multiple markups, there's gotta be a way, whether it's in parentheses or a different font or something, that you identify what they are so that people can read it.
Or just want us, there's 2 that are similar, or there's 2 that are going totally different directions?
Excuse me, Ted, you had another change too on the first page, the very last words, business manager. On that one, you want to change to food
Director.
services director.
Director.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
I think there were 2 that stayed, and then the weekly, monthly thing was just pulled
Take
out.
it out,
Yeah.
just take that out.
We've beaten that one up enough.
That was fun.
Till October.
My flight's not till 5:30 tomorrow morning, so we have
Oh my
plenty of time.
We'll keep you here for just a little bit longer.
So the next one is the student submission to educational surveys and research.
This is the new one?
This is also a new one. This is our practice.
You're already doing this?
We already do this. We, parents have to be notified of any surveys that we do. I'm sure you've all seen those. I mean, if your child's gone to the middle school, Jerry's done a bunch of these in the last few years. Parents have the right to opt out. They have the right to review instructional material that's involved. Parents have the right to inspect. A survey created by a third party. So all of that's already in place. We notify parents of that. We occasionally get organizations that come in and want to, do a survey on drug use or some type of survey, and so parents always have the right to review the material and opt out of that.
Again, I read this and I see so many shades of gray in here that
In the end,
to me it's
it's very simple. Parents have the right to view surveys, to have their child not participate in surveys. That's what's really here.
that's what our policy should state. We don't need a full page to say that. The policy should be, for anything like this, parent has the option to opt the child out, and the parent has the option to review all the materials. That's the policy. Again,
Too much stuff.
it's just, there's so many words on here for what appears to be such a simple policy.
I just feel like when we go that way, people say, well, what about instructional material? What about, and
Who has the right to do that?
yeah.
Does the superintendent have the right to assign somebody else to do it? Where can the parent inspect it? Can they take it out of the building? The number of
But it doesn't,
questions.
where does it say where the parent, they can take it out of the building or
Right.
can't take it out of the building now?
Right.
And again, if we're gonna go that route, then I'm gonna go back to the meal charging policy and say, the meal charging policy is gonna have to be as rigid as where someone can look at this, when they can look at it, who has to be there when they look at it. They can't have a pen or pencil or any type of marking device with it. They have to wear gloves, clean gloves, they can't leave fingerprints, anything like that. I mean, now we're getting a little crazy with policy.
I think we're gonna get into a lot of discussions around how gray is gray. For me, a single page on this that's been through some thought process that follows the general practice we have now, that MASC, now maybe they're doing a poor job at it, but MASC, one of the services they're meant to provide is to take the laws that we have to require and come up with policy that would meet that law, right? So that's that whole legal reference. I don't think,
Then wouldn't the policy be, we'll follow the law? And why do you need to have the rest of this?
Well, that's
Is that
essentially
too-
what
is
it's
that too
saying.
simple?
So I think if we
If
read the
this-
law, it would be pages upon pages. It's been whittled down
This is
to
the
a
condensed
page.
version.
I
Okay.
hope if the superintendent or the administration doesn't follow the law, the policy will allow me to get out of that contract if it's been that egregious of an offense.
This one's
Frankly,
very
that's-
simple for you as school committee, in my mind. This is saying, you as a school committee are telling me
You better do this.
that parents have the right to opt out of a survey. They don't have to do this. That's really what this is.
That's all, it's,
That's what this says, and I think you're right, Nate. This is the condensed version of probably 4 pages of a lot of legalese that the lawyers have to protect. I mean, that's what MASC is. They have a team of lawyers that look at this, and they write this as an attorney would, to protect the school district.
I think there's a really good question in how many different policies do we have, like the last two we've looked at, that mention that you're providing notice of this annually
yeah.
to parents? Because again, in this one,
It's really, that's why our student handbooks, when I
Ridiculous
started as a
fact.
principal, our student handbook was about 20 pages, and now they're approaching 100 with addendums on them, and that's what this is, and no one reads them.
No, no one,
No one's ever gonna,
That's what I was
No.
gonna say too. For the 4 or 5 people per year that even glance at this, more information on one page is better than open for interpretation, a couple of sentences. this is condensed enough from,
No, I mean, the idea that you have to notify parents, no one's gonna read that. The most important thing is that when we do a survey to ask anybody to fill out something, that we have a permission slip for parents that they see and they sign off on. That's what's there. This is why no one wants to do policy
No,
subcommittee.
because it's,
Because it is, it's tedious.
but
used
it's
to read them.
verbose. We're saying the same thing
Yes,
many
and
different ways. And that's legalese. You can condense it and still have it mean the same thing.
this covers everything.
Yeah, but you could still condense it and have it mean
Attorneys looked
this-
at this and they said, if you have all of this in, you've thrown it all against the wall, no one can come back at you. That's what your
just
job is.
But they
they're
still can.
They're still wrong.
But they still can.
They still
Yeah.
can if we break the policy.
What's the point in taking the page and turning it into something that the lawyers will say, yep, you did the same thing in a quarter page?
Well, like this one,
Congratulations.
where practical, the district will directly notify parents annually at the beginning of the school year, when surveys, analysis, or evaluations are scheduled or anticipated.
Okay,
How about we can get rid of where practical, and we should just be letting them know anytime there is something.
well, what happens if we make a mistake and the where practical is gone? Is the
All right.
lawyer gonna come back and say, well, you know,
Okay, then you have where practical, and then that eliminates the question.
Yes.
But you don't need to have, we'll do it annually at the beginning of the school year.
the point of the question is, if we've taken the law and we brought it down to a page, and it's not asking them to do anything that we disagree with, why are we spending more energy and time on that when we could spend more energy and time on something else? If there's a part to it that we say, that's wrong, I'm good on the debate around, should we as a policy make the repercussions of not paying for lunch more strict? I disagree with it, but I get, at least we're having the discussion around, in terms of, I don't like the fact that the lawyers made this sound like legalese and took an electronic page of paper. Okay,
I don't like the way it reads, because I'm just concerned.
then make a proposal for a change, but don't, I mean, at 9:45 in the second policy, it's a long time of discussions about, I don't like the way it's worded, I wanna word it in a different way to do the same thing.
Well, then maybe we should just have a policy that we adopt all
Update
MASC
policies.
policies and we move on. We don't have to have these discussions.
Well, it's pretty much what we do. We give them a reading and we look and we see, is there anything that doesn't fit in Sutton? But for the most part, we let their lawyers boil it
But
down
in the
to,
past, I've been pretty good about this, and really all I've done is I've dealt with a lot of English and grammar corrections, because a lot of this stuff is wrong. It doesn't read the way it should read if you want it to mean what they're trying to have it mean. That's where most of my stuff has come in. But I don't know. I just get
make a red line. But I mean, because so far what I've heard is it's too long, I don't like the wording, but, so come up with new wording, but
If
don't do
we're
it on
If
the
we're
meeting.
fussing with the language, I don't know.
I
I
do.
want it to be readable, and I want it to be readable to the average person.
I thought it was incredibly important that the administration said, I've read through this, we as a practice meet these requirements. I think that's incredibly important. I think if there's a policy that comes through from Mass General Law or from federal law, that we take a look long enough to know, do we meet that? If we don't meet it, why? Are there other more strict pieces we should put in?
That's fine. Then, in order for me to say, I agree with that, show me the policy, the procedure that goes with this, and I'll be fine. I won't have any questions.
Yeah, so I don't have fair enough. You want the administration to show you the procedures that match the policies. I'm not as interested in that. I hope you can do that maybe before a meeting, or we could, but
It's just,
So-
there are some where it's just, I don't, some town gets sued for something, and then next thing they'll get a policy. It's just practice in our field, that if you're gonna ask anybody to do any type of surveys or anything, that you have to seek their parents' permission. We just can't willy-nilly do that. So it's just,
I don't have an issue with that part of it, but what I'm saying is the same thing Kristen is saying. It took a whole page of legalese to say what you just said in one sentence.
so what? What's the point?
I'm struggling with that too.
I-
Move on. I
So-
mean,
And, I mean, we can move, I mean, if people
it's
don't
that we
want
don't
to.
have an issue with any of it here
It's a
except that
good first
long.
reading.
Because we got a whole stack of policies that are written that same way.
Yeah.
And, I mean,
And
you know,
if they're
again,
not-
we've
if
beaten
they-
this
if
one, we
they're
can move to the
ruining our
next one.
school if they're ruining our schooling, then we should make changes. But if it's just something that was provided by the state and every town in the state has the same thing, and no one else is struggling with the wording, I think we can.
We don't
can-
know if anybody else is.
We can go
Oh,
and
it's
check out
just
any
long.
school's policy. When I've done this in the past, any of those schools that are part of MASC, which is most,
Yeah,
it is extremely similar.
right.
You find a few words here and there, but for the most part, most school districts seemingly take what MASC provides, and it is a boiled-down version of the law, and they do it such that it applies to the schools in a nice general way so that it allows the administration to run the schools.
And useful to read through on a regular basis to say, oh, wow, look at that policy. We do something that just doesn't fit, that's changed.
Right.
Let's get that corrected.
Something has changed in
And-
our district, the policy doesn't fit any longer.
Yeah, and if philosophically we just don't agree with the intent, having those debates, I'm struggling with the need or the desire to rewrite them so they're shorter or so that they're broader, which I think is what I heard.
I just don't look, yeah, whatever.
I-
Grammatically, for me, this doesn't work.
So
I'll move on from this one if,
Yeah.
if.
That's fine.
you know,
I think, and that's the nice part with the second reading, you come back and, you know, hey, we should change this part or that part. Similarly, I don't have a huge appetite for making major changes. As I read these, I feel like for the most part, they adequately fit. But again, first reading, we'll have a second and a third. We could have a fourth and a fifth if we need to.
We did literally used to read them.
Yes, that was a really fun introduction for me joining school committee back then.
Yes, we did.
So we'll move on to the next one, which is parental notification relative to sex education.
This is just rename, this change, teaching about drugs, alcohol, and tobacco, and now this is parental notification related to sex education. And basically, and again, it's our practice that if there is a course or any type of program that deals with parents, guardians of students in schools will be notified in writing of courses and curriculum offered that primarily involve human sexual and human sexuality issues. We do. We have course descriptions. Anytime there's any programs, if there was any assembly or anything, parents are notified. Children cannot. I mean, it follows the same thing. Parents have the right to review the curriculum. They have the right to opt out of something if for some reason they are given an alternative assignment. So it's just the procedures we do. We have kids who opt out of this.
If they opt out, the alternative assignment should be to go through some of these policies.
But again, and it just takes it through to, if they don't like what's happened, then they can go to the superintendent. If they're not happy with what, they can write a written request to the school committee for review of the issue. So it takes it all the way through the steps that a parent can take.
How often does policy help clarify whether an issue a parent has, for lack of a better term, is eligible for review by the school committee?
How often?
So there are sometimes questions, there's a parent who they want something to happen, and they say to the teacher, I want this, no, you can't have it. They say to the principal, no, you can't have it. They say to the superintendent, no, you can't have it. And then oftentimes people think, well, the next step is I'll go to the school committee. But with each of those steps, there's sort of an element of, well, you can tell the school committee you're unhappy, but it's not really their choice. Is that something that is or should be covered? Maybe it's easily interpreted from the policy, I'm not sure.
By a lawyer.
But, so as a practical matter, we have had questions around, there's somebody wants to bring something to the committee, and they want the committee to overrule what the administration has said. And very often the discussion is this really even a decision for the,
Well, in
for the
this,
school
in this
committee?
whole policy with reference to such sex ed, it says that the school committee will review the issue and give the parents a timely decision.
Right, that's what prompted it, is that's not that often in there, but as
Yeah, I mean,
Ted was saying that, I thought, okay, so we don't do that all the time.
No.
Maybe we should understand the policy a little better
no.
to know whether or not this is really an issue that belongs at a committee meeting.
But this policy, this
Does,
particular policy.
for sure.
Says.
So,
And it goes all to the Commissioner of Education.
Yes.
excellent, so we can pass it up too.
Yeah.
I think there's some sort of process or procedure, and I'm not looking at Ted. All of these seem to have reminder notices. So like in this one as policy, the principal gets a copy of this from you once a year.
Now, what'll happen is, we will take this, it'll be adopted on third reading, and I will send this out to the principals to please add this to the student handbook.
So, cool. The superintendent of schools will distribute a copy of this policy to each principal by September 1 of each year. How are
We'll
you
do that
gonna,
as well.
how are you gonna, so,
That's
but
the
it,
problem. You're right.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're absolutely
So
right.
is there a copy of the policies that's got a little sticky, the 1 year sticky, the 3 months? How do you get a reminder notice?
Doing it on my calendar, like September 1st.
You're
Yeah.
flagging
Little note,
things.
yeah.
For sure, your problem, not mine, but as I'm reading that, I'm thinking you
Yeah, do all
might
these
want to,
little reminders to get it.
and that goes back to, if it doesn't happen and we go to you with a whole new cast of characters or players involved, if you have an issue with a principal and they say, well, I didn't get it, I didn't get that, what else didn't you give me? I don't know why I got such a bad review. Just saying, you should, you know.
Let's take that line out.
It's in all of them. All right, I say it's in all of them. It's been in the first two we've looked at.
Just so they're reminded each year that you have to do this. Again, I don't know how, you're right. We move on, someone else takes over, and,
Oh.
I mean, there's a book of policies like this.
Yes, which is ridiculous.
And you know when I look at them? When I have a question or someone asks me something, I don't study these
Yeah,
policies.
and I don't think
But
it,
the first line of the policy is in accordance with the law.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So if you didn't do this, Ted, you broke the law.
I know. I do know that.
And that's my issue with part of these policies. If it's the law and you didn't do it, or this committee didn't do it, what are the,
Now, in
But
accordance with,
in
in
accordance with the
the
law,
law.
means you're following the law. This policy isn't the law. This is to follow the law. We're doing this to meet the requirements of the law. But when we add extra things in there, it's not saying it's illegal if we don't do that. We're just breaking policy.
but this says, in accordance with the law, the school committee will adopt this policy, okay? You as a school committee say, I think it's unrealistic to think that, the superintendent of schools is gonna remember every single policy in some of a way to notify, them. You might wanna just say that the school committee will require the superintendent to add this policy to the student handbook.
but I heard an argument before that the MISC as attorneys go through all of this sort of stuff, and essentially we should just rubber stamp this stuff, and I disagree with that. And that's why I think it's important that we go through all the policies.
Well, that's what
And
we're doing.
I'm sorry that it's 10 o'clock at night, but
I'm agreeing, on
No.
this particular one, I'm like,
That's
you have a valid point.
primary functions is policy.
there's a whole stack of policies here that are written the same way.
I don't disagree with going through the policy. I disagree with some of the issues we have, or with the concerns without proposals for change. So if there's a problem with, or if there's a red line.
I can show you a whole red line version of
Yeah.
proposals for
Excellent.
change.
And we said, and so, but we haven't talked about the whole list of red line proposals. We've kind of spun around, and we said in the second reading, we'd get a collection of red lines if people wanted. Great, so we get some time to prep for that. But that's not what we've done.
I was put on a committee to do that last year with Kristen. I went through all of this and the committee was never asked to report back.
Wow. It's a shame. I think the superintendent of schools probably has to get that to the principal once a year to protect, again, we've got a great cast of characters, but to protect
Long-term.
principals and superintendent relationship, the policy helps there. I don't know how you fix it, but I think you're gonna find in a lot of the policies, you probably need a cheat sheet or something that just says, come September, did you do this? Come,
The good news is, we currently do all these things. On all three of these, we've got procedures and practices in place. They just add another layer of
Specificity.
thank you,
Okay.
to the process that we're gonna have to pay attention to.
I think we'll move on to the superintendent's update.
So do you vote to approve this on first reading? Do you make a
No.
vote
No
or no?
motion.
Just a first reading, okay. Okay, I got a mess here. Let me see where I am. All right.
first update's gonna bring up a little delinquent on that September 1 thing.
It's a new policy. I didn't have to do it because it's on first reading, so. And I think it said, or thereabouts or something. Can I do one thing that's not on the agenda that I'll need a vote for? And that is these lanyards. We've finished our allotment of lanyards and we want to buy 100 of them. And we want to take it out of building use because it's tied to building use. The total cost is $425 for the lanyards, the breakaway lanyards, so no one gets, so to get 100 lanyards to make sure that anybody comes in, visitors come in, staff come in, we want to purchase 100 lanyards for $425.
Anybody?
You're just overspending the budget line, is that the problem?
Taking out of building use.
So I think as a policy, we set a small value
Just
amount that
revolving.
we said, just
Yeah.
warn us and we'll vote
Vote.
later.
Yeah.
Right? I've forgotten the exact.
Something
Yeah,
like
Five
500 or
5,000.
5,000.
It was a big
Yeah.
block of money. The point is, I don't think you need a vote. I think what we asked was that
Just-
you warned us how you were gonna
Yeah.
do it, and then that we put it
Yeah.
in a vote.
I'm gonna do that.
Check.
All right. So I provided the calendar of events. You have other calendar of events. They did all of the homecoming sporting events, but there are also sporting events taking place on a regular basis. But this is, what I thought we would do is for each school committee meeting, provide you with 2 or 3 week outlook of different events that are taking place in the school, so that's there. Class size, you asked about class size. You can see that in kindergarten, we have an average class size of 25 per class, which has some kindergarten teachers upset. But there is an instructional aide per class, so there are 2 adults in a class. We do have special education supports and Title I supports. So we have a lot of supports in kindergarten, but it is a lot of 5-year-olds, they have to get dressed during the winter and those things. First grade has a class size of 23, second grade 22, grades 3, 4, and 5, an average class size of 21. The issue here is how we flip-flop between 4 teachers and 5 teachers. It makes a huge difference in the class size. Obviously, the following year, we're gonna have to look at the kindergarten class going into first grade. We're gonna absolutely have to have 5 teachers in that grade, which will mean probably moving the 5th grade, or someone from the 5th grade down to, or the 3rd grade down to first grade, or something like that. But it also brings up the conversation about, well, because as a class moves up of 21, you might have be able to move.
I guess
So
I'm
the-
just saying
The
that
class,
you're just pushing the bubble. There's the 21,
I-
the 25 and the 21 are flipping grades, the way you're describing
well,
that.
right now in grade 2, there's 4 teachers with So that, but there's 5 in grade 3. So you won't need 5 teachers in grade 3 next year, so
Got
that
it.
person can go down to
Got it.
go down to first grade. But ultimately, it begs the question, and something that the vision committee will talk about is, where do I prioritize? Where do we prioritize 5 teachers at each grade level? So that's what I wanted to point. That, all that was to say that, sorry. 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, you can see that 8th grade is a pretty large class. Grade 6 averaged 22 to 24, grade 7, 22 and 23, and grade 8.
Grade 6, we're saying there's 96 students, 98 rather. Is that you just add them up and that's the total student body?
No, because there are special education students that may not be counted in this.
Okay.
I can get those numbers. I can get the total class size. I want to, well, I'm
And
going to
it's,
say a number.
and it's not exactly 5 classes of
Hold on a
24
second,
each,
let me
it's
just-
an
I might
average,
have
right?
that back here behind it.
So I'm just
I see.
curious what the total number
That's
is.
what I was interested in.
Total. No, it doesn't print out that way for Mr. Goyette's printout, I'm sorry. I'll get the total, I'll give that to you next. And the high school average, as you can see the average, but that's just an average, it's misleading. There are a number of classes that have 30 kids in them, not a large number, a handful of classes that have 30, and then there are a handful of classes that have 8 or 10. But the average for a teacher comes right around 100 students. So the average class size, though, see, just how the schedule works. I have a note from Mr. McCarthy. It's not this one. But like I said, the average teacher load is 100 students in English. The average teacher load in history is 86 students, in math 84 students, world language 83, and the fine arts 68. That's the average number of students that they have. The average class size is 18.
And my curiosity was, how many classes do we have with 8 to 10 students in it?
Yes, and I can get that for you. And it's
Or
fun.
30 students in it? That was my curiosity was, so.
Right.
Might
Those
just be a
classes are,
distribution. Just go across the whole thing.
but it's all within, it's all like 4 or 5 classes of both that. There are some, to make the schedule work, there are some of the same class with 12 in one class, 28 in another. You just couldn't make the schedules work. But I went by an AP physics class, and that's 6 students. So the question I asked, and we talked about with Mr. McCarthy, is where do we, and it's hard because it competes against other AP classes. So if you want, there are other AP classes that, not everybody's interested in AP physics, obviously. So we're talking, is that a class that we're gonna maybe shelve and not have because there's too much competition with APs when you get to junior and senior year, and some just don't, or do we offer it once every 2 years or what?
Well, and I think that goes back to the planning, that if you have a plan in 9th grade, AP Physics is every other year. And you kind of project and say, I could take it
And you can plan ahead.
sophomore
If
year,
you know, you can,
senior year, and that's it, so, yeah.
But-
If you can get in and
It
get
is-
your
yeah.
electives.
yeah, that's true, if you can get in that
Yeah.
year too, which is the other
Yeah.
challenge.
So I will tell you, as we're on that subject, I did check with the counselors. There was only a couple of students where the parents called and contacted the school regarding their schedule. Just a couple. So there wasn't a lot of parents coming in. That doesn't mean there weren't choices that students have to make, because they always have to make them. But there were no concerned parents, other than, like I said, 1 or 2 parents that had voiced concern, and I believe those were addressed as well. But I do think that's part of what we're gonna be doing with the vision committee. Just double check once. And I can get, and for the next meeting, Di, I'll get how many classes have more than 25 in the high school and less than 10?
That'd be
Does that-
fine.
That sound okay? All right. Anything else on class size? Okay. So I ask each principal now to give me an update. So the Early Learning Center Elementary report that very smooth start to the school year. Everything went pretty well. Kindergarten had their ice cream social on September 7th. Picture Day was September 12th. You all remember that, right? The kids coming in their nice, fancy come-to-school clothing, and it was great. We had a Choose to Be Nice assembly in grades 3, 4, and 5 to begin the year. The 5th grade students attended a band demonstration with Mrs. Dame, and French music. Just to report out, where is it? 80% of our 5th graders have signed up to do band this year. 80%. And every time I think of these things, I go off on little tangents in these meetings. I know it's getting late, but here's one of the things that the Vision Committee has to look at. It's like that soccer program you talked to me about with your son when he was, if he doesn't start this soccer program at 7 years old, he's never going to get into. We kind of have that problem with our music department as well. If you don't start band in 5th grade, for all practical purposes, you can't do band in our district. Those are things that I hope the Vision Committee are going to address. That's a problem. So anyway, but 80%, that's a lot of kids, which also affects chorus numbers. If 80% of the kids are doing that, it affects how many kids do chorus. So it's a good problem to have, but it's something we need to look at. And again, they did class pictures. The magazine drive, everybody's favorite, starts on September 7th, so that already started. Middle school, Jerry already talked about all those things, but he already had his first T&O. That was Friday evening. And the high school, the students came in and gave a presentation. They did pictures on September 7th. The senior class is going to the senior adventure park, and that day I'm the principal of the day at the high school, which is nice for me to be able to get into the high school and do that. We reported out well, let me start with Roger. I've mentioned now to you that there was a couple of classrooms that had some mold. We've been very proactive with this. Cheryl Wawinski, the health inspector, has come in. She comes at least 3 or 4 times a week. She met with me this afternoon. There was another room that we identified. We're changing those ceiling tiles. We have the custodians going through those rooms every day. The building was much, much, much better today in those classrooms because there was low humidity over the weekend.
So
we don't have there is not a major issue at all with mold in our district.
But do we know why we're getting it?
We do.
Okay.
So it was so hot and humid this summer that the pipes, because the AC was running all summer, the pipes were dripping water
onto the ceiling and
through
then,
the insulation, and it hit the ceiling tiles. And then we cleaned those rooms first, closed the doors. They were kind of self-contained, and it really wasn't a major problem. It wasn't like all our desks were covered with mold or anything like that. Just small little spots of mold that we've cleaned. There is one teacher that is very allergic to this. We put that teacher in a different room until those symptoms go away. So we've handled that very, very well. Another problem, and I always get these different parts to our air handler systems and everything. We've had a couple of compressors. The compressors are blowing all the time, which is not normal. I will report, though, that there were 2 compressors, 2 different units, blew, but the company that put them in many years ago are still honoring it. They're paying for the compressor units, and they're paying for the repair of those compressor units. So it's not costing us anything, but the problem is when they go down, so the back parking lot side of the high school, the condition there didn't work the first week of school. That wasn't great. The rooms are 82 degrees, 83 degrees, but you go on the other side, and the rooms are 75. And so they've got to figure out the root cause of why these compressors are not functioning properly.
They're not coming, looking at it and saying, what we have here is the phases were reversed and this won't happen again.
That happened once, or twice, or 3 times. I mean, it's every year. They come out all the time.
Yeah.
And
no.
so,
Who's trying to determine what the root cause is?
well, we got MPC now, who didn't have the contract, but there are internal people, and they're working through the process now. So we have them and then Roger goes after the company that did the initial install, and they're the ones who are paying for it.
I think the answer is MPC is looking at and saying, this is what caused the failure. If you fix this piece,
That's
you
what,
shouldn't see it again.
right. That's the answer to that. However, we haven't solved the problems yet, so they're going back to the drawing board again to try to figure out what the root cause is. I spoke to you last year. We agreed to enter into a contract with U Inc. to provide counseling services at the schools. They have now provided us 2 counselors, so we have one day a week at the Early Learning Center Elementary School, and we have one at the high school and middle school 1 day a week, and that's working out very, very well. So that's really a nice benefit to our school district and doesn't cost us anything. We did an active shooter drill this afternoon with our middle and high school staff and some of our instructional aides from across the district. This was not with students. It was after school. We had area police officers from 5 different towns come in. We had a person coming in simulating shooting a cap gun. And we took the staff through 5 different scenarios of how to handle it. From the original scenario of you close your door and you hide in the corner and you escalate through different ways to approach an active shooter. It is still not very pleasant to hear cap guns going off in your school. Hear over the intercom there's an active shooter in the elementary or the middle school second floor wing. But it's the way we work in, and it was good practice. So that was. It's the world we live in, I guess, that we have to have these drills. But I will point out, though, that these drills affect professional development. You know, if you're doing these drills, it's an hour and a half that you could be doing some other curriculum work and other things. So it does take away from that. And finally, I've scheduled 6 coffee with the superintendent. The first one is this Wednesday at 10 in the morning from 10 to 11 in my conference room. I've invited Officer McGee to join me to answer any parents' questions about school security. I'm going to talk about the vision committee and any questions that parents have that they may want to ask me. You forget that this is my 9th year and that there are a lot of families that came in and they really don't know me. So this gives parents an opportunity to come in and get a sense of what the superintendent's all about. And I think
That's this week, Ted.
that's this Wednesday, 10 a.m. in my office. And that's all I have.
Anybody have anything else?
Ted, I just had a quick question. I had a couple of parents ask me about the letter that went home with the nurse for the 7th grade screening. They were gonna do some questions on alcohol and drugs.
Yes.
Could you just, because we're on camera, could you just talk a little bit about that? Because they were, I don't know, just parents were had strong feelings about it.
So this, again, is an opt-out. This is a perfect
Right.
example of that policy. So this came into play a couple of years ago, and it was, I'm not fully prepared to, but I believe that this was a legislative directive that we do screening in 7th grade and in a high school grade. And it's a series of questions that the nurses got trained on to address some of the issues that are facing adolescents today. Drugs, those types of things. And so, but it's controversial. And this is an example where we notify parents that we're doing this and they can opt their child out of it. So there's no commitment for the parents, but it gives some pretty good data. If you would like, I could invite one of our nurses to come in who's been trained to do this and kind of give the committee. She did at one time do this already, but it might be nice for her to come in. I can ask her to come in and go over exactly what they do. Does that sound
Is
right?
that something anyone else is interested in having?
Yeah,
I-
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So
I think if we put it on the agenda and just had it towards the beginning of the meeting, so that if there are folks, like some of the people that I've spoken to, I could let them know
Sure.
that this is gonna be something that they could watch or attend.
So I'm assuming since they do it in seventh and ninth grade, they've got something to back it up as far as evidence-based practice.
Yes, this was something that,
But seventh grade is late for starting to address these issues.
I shouldn't have said that. What I should have said is, I'll have Michelle come in, who's trained, who provides this, because it's a comprehensive assessment that she has to interview kids. So let her tell you, because this is what she does.
And my understanding is it's something that they have identified seventh grade as a time where kids are making decisions, and this came down from the State House. It's not a
Yes.
Sutton, it's not a
Right,
Sutton
right.
policy, this is a
But I think
state
that's
policy.
also more based on the fact of the true junior high school, where you've got seventh and eighth versus a middle school where you've got sixth, seventh, and eighth.
Mhm.
This is something that we're required to do.
Right, but I'm just saying, I think it should be done earlier, and I think it should be done yearly. I mean, that's a huge expense, but I'm just saying, we're missing a lot in there.
Right,
And,
I don't disagree.
and I wasn't putting you on the spot tonight, but what
No,
wanted to
I
let-
wish but I'll get that.
What the parents I spoke to were concerned about is that some parents got the emails, some did not.
Oh,
And they were a little bit concerned that they were that certain kids were being picked out.
So
to
singled
be,
out.
To be screened.
Mm.
That was their main concern, that they, instead of this whole seventh grade getting it, this was something certain kids or certain families were getting.
I don't believe that's the case, but let me find out a little bit more about that to see if there's any
Thank you.
truth to that or not.
No, it's good.
But this is a perfect example of that policy. We need to notify parents. We cannot run kids through a survey without parents' permission.
Just the calendar things real quick between now and our next meeting. September 13th is the middle school open house. September 19th, the elementary school PTO meeting, 7 o'clock in the library. September 19th, the vision committee will meet at 6 o'clock in the team room. And homecoming weekend is September 28th and 29th. And our next meeting is October 1st. Anybody have anything else? Motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Who votes against that one?
The uniforms?